Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The Sacramento City Council will please come to order. Would the clerk please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Ashby is expected momentarily. Councilmember Laloe.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Valenzuela.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chenier.
Here.
Councilmember Guerra.
Here.
Councilmember Jennings.
Here.
Councilmember Vang.
Here.
And Mayor Steinberg.
Here. Madam Clerk, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you. Whoever may stand, please do so. I pledge of allegiance
Yes, to the flag
To the flag of the
United States
of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic for
for
which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, everyone. This is an official meeting of the City Council, but it's also a workshop session. Before we move to the items, and starting with the consent calendar, I'd like to ask the city attorney to please report out on an item that the council discussed in closed session.
Yes, Mayor and Council. Today in closed session, the City Council authorized the city attorney to seek leave to file a complaint and intervention pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.1A2. Once formally commenced, the action, defendants, and other particulars about the case shall be disclosed to any person upon inquiry in accordance with the Brown Act.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for that report. We begin with the consent calendar today. I know Councilmember Guerra has said he wants to discuss item 12. Councilmember Guerra, what do you want to discuss that separately, or are you?
Yeah, I'll actually make a motion to approve the consent calendar and also give direction to the city manager for staff to follow up with the folks at the California Mobility Center on efforts to electrify and produce locally manufactured equipment. But I'll move the consent calendar with that direction.
Okay, and that relates to item 12?
That is correct. And
Okay.
I'll discuss after public comment.
Okay, very good. Is there a second on the consent calendar?
I will second the motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Jennings. Members, are there any other items that members would like to discuss separately or to be voted on separately? All right, is there public testimony, Madam Clerk, on the consent calendar?
I have no callers on the consent calendar.
Okay, then Councilmember Guerra, the floor is yours to discuss item 12.
Great, thank you. First, I want to thank Mark and Allison from our fleet management team. They've done tremendous work in getting us the best bang for our dollar for all our fleet, and also taking steps forward to electrify our fleet. I know in the upcoming council meetings, we're going to be looking at some of our heavy-duty garbage and solid waste facilities and trucks that will be electrifying. But I want to make sure that as part of our scale-up measures that we passed last week, the Climate Commission goals of making sure that we have an economy that's also based on that we don't lose the opportunity to procure and contract here locally to build those electric needs and demands that we have. And we already know that SMUD is engaged in actually producing and constructing some of their heavy-duty fleet. This is only 4 dump trucks that we need, and those don't actually have a lot of EMT. So while these may be ones that we can't immediately procure, we definitely do not want to miss the opportunity that as our fleet ages, that we're hiring and purchasing locally and not purchasing, again, out of state and having our tax dollars go elsewhere. Let's build and train people here. So that's all I have to say on that. And I do want to thank our fleet team again for their great work to move us in this direction.
Very good. Thank you very much, Council Member. All right, if there are no other comments, let's call the roll on the consent calendar, please.
Mayor, this is Brian Moore of Public Works. Can I just respond to that real quick?
Yes, of course.
I wanted to mention we did have a discussion with Councilmember this morning. We've heard his direction, and we will be following up with the Mobility Center staff. We've got a meeting in the works right now. So we heard it and we will proceed with that.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Okay. Now let's call the roll, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem is absent. Councilmember Laloe.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Valenzuela.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chenier.
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra.
Aye.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Councilmember Vang.
Yes.
And Mayor Steinberg.
Yes. All right. The consent calendar is passed. We do have 2 items before we get to the workshops. Can we take items 13 and 14 together, both the code compliance case fees and the housing and dangerous building case fees? Can we take that together?
Yes, I can present them concurrently.
Okay, separate votes, I know, but please present them concurrently. Thank you very much, Mr. Lemos.
Good afternoon, Mayor Steinberg and members of the City Council. I'm Peter Lemos, the Code and Housing Enforcement Chief for your Community Development Department. The items before you are the Neighborhood Code Compliance and Housing and Dangerous Buildings case fees and penalties for special assessment and/or personal obligation. The Community Development Department administrative fees and penalties, Neighborhood Code Compliance case fees, staff reports list an amended total of 151 properties with a sum of $332,370 of unpaid fees and penalties scheduled for special assessment and/or personal obligations against the property. 6 properties listed in Exhibit A of the staff report have been removed from the report and identified as line numbers 98 and 99, 134, 175 through 177, 204, and 218. 1 property listed in Exhibit B of the staff report has been removed from the report and is identified as line number 2. Item 14, the Housing and Dangerous Buildings case fee staff report lists an amended total of 36 properties with a total of $42,162.33 of unpaid fees scheduled for liens against the property. 1 property listed in Exhibit A of the staff report have set up a payment plan and have been paid in full, and they're identified at line numbers 25 and 26. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt the 2 resolutions separately as amended by or allowed by the City Council to collect the unpaid fees and placing special assessments, levies, or other personal obligations upon the properties. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Is there public testimony, Madam Clerk, on either items 13 or 14?
I have no callers for 13 or 14.
Okay, are there council questions or comments on either item?
Mayor, I'll move to open and close the public hearing and move the item.
That's item 13. Why don't we dispense with that first? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Valenzuela. Let's call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Ashby is absent. Councilmember Laloe.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Valenzuela.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chenier.
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra.
Aye.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Councilmember Vang.
Yes.
And Mayor Steinberg.
Yes. All right. Let's take a motion in a second, please, on item 14.
Mayor, I'll move to open and close the public hearing and move the item. Oh, sorry, Mr. Laloe, go ahead and do that.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
John, go ahead.
I'm still learning, Mayor. I'm taking notes from the pros.
You are a pro. I'm going to say moved by Councilmember Laloe and seconded by Councilmember Guerra without objection. So call the roll, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Ashby is absent. Councilmember Laloe.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Valenzuela.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chenier.
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra.
Aye.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Councilmember Vang.
Yes.
And Mayor Steinberg.
Yes. All right, that passes 8-0 as well. Thank you very much. Members, we now move to the heart of this afternoon's agenda with 2 workshops. The first workshop relates to our master siting plan around homelessness. The second workshop is in conjunction with the Measure U Community Advisory Committee around participatory budgeting. And of course, we will begin with item 15. And I would like to make a couple of opening remarks. Members, in January, you voted unanimously to begin a process of developing a master siting operations program and financing plan to address homelessness for the medium term and long term in Sacramento. As you know, over these last several weeks, we have been dealing with the emergency around homelessness. And it is our responsibility to be able to lead on multiple levels on this complex and vital issue. Today's workshop is the first in a series of master planning workshops that I anticipate and expect will lead to a June vote, where we vote on a comprehensive siting plan for long-term shelter, tiny homes, permanent housing, safe camping, safe parking garages, even, yes, warming centers or respite centers, whatever it is we intend to call them, so that once that vote is taken in June, we will never then have to re-argue what sites are appropriate for what use. And the goal here is not just to pilot a bunch of new approaches, but to actually put together a plan that addresses the needs of thousands of people, and as importantly, the needs of all of our affected communities, both business and residential. So today we start with some foundation work. Today we want to get the big picture. We want to get the data on the numbers of unsheltered people, the gaps in data due to COVID. We want to understand and talk about exactly what it is we and our county partners are doing in terms of services, from prevention to permanent housing, currently to address homelessness, and again, where the gaps are. I want to say to you that I am really hopeful after getting the reports and participating in at least one, but getting the reports of the district council members' workshops with your communities, the community meetings in your communities. Every single report I have gotten has been incredibly positive, not just about the jobs you have done in leading, which I and the city appreciates, but also in the way that your constituents, the participants, have responded in a calm, in a questioning appropriately, but in a collaborative way. And that's exactly what we need to continue to do. I do think it is important to, without, quote, defending the record, to talk about just what has occurred over the last 2 weeks in Sacramento, in the midst of these very, very challenging times. The community has stepped up, whether it's the St. John's program for real change, rotating meal kits to different motels. And I want to thank all of the contributors, whether it was Kaiser, the realtors, 17,500 paratransit providing delivery with their PPP funds, the donations from so many quarters of health snacks, water, blankets, toothbrush, toothpaste, hygiene supplies. The city, of course, has stepped up in huge ways, from the city manager on down. They have worked extraordinary hours, and here are the results. The Library Galleria, and some of these are repeat guests, we've had 1,116 unsheltered people housed over the last 2 weeks. Southside Park, 56. In our safe parking city garage, 27 vehicles. RT has stepped up with their shuttle, which has been so helpful. 25 trailers at Cal Expo are now hosting families. And with our beginning of our Motel Voucher program, 3 motels are making available 272 rooms as a start. February 2nd, it grew to 4 motels and 312 rooms. And today, the city's team is finalizing contracts for 2 more motels for a total of 369 rooms. And as a result of your action last week, the city council action last week, the staff is procuring and site identifying 60 tiny homes that will provide shelter for between 60 and 120 people, depending upon whether they are couples. And so the work is far from complete. I don't put that out to pat ourselves on the back as much as to continue to update the community that we are not making a choice between short-term emergency intervention and long-term planning, but in fact, we are doing both. And so today we have a full agenda where we're going to discuss, again, an overview of the problem in Sacramento, systemic factors in working to address homelessness. We have Lisa Bates from Sacramento Steps Forward. We are going to get a presentation on a national framework to address homelessness from Patrick Wigmore of Homebase. And then we are going to talk, and it's going to be the first of many discussions on large campus solutions. Some talk about Haven for Hope. Some talk about the Tucson model. Some talk about Colorado. There are all kinds of models, but the idea of a large campus-based setting, and we have Dr. David Lubarsky, who has taken the lead in beginning these discussions in our community. Of course, he's the Vice Chancellor and CEO of UC Davis Health, and our friend Chet Hewitt, the CEO of Sierra Health. And then we have Chris Jones, who's the board president for Hope for Sacramento, and plenty of time for community input and council discussion. I want to begin by introducing Lisa Bates, who of course is the CEO of Sacramento Steps Forward. This is the lead organization for the Sacramento Homelessness Continuum of Care, the recipient of millions of dollars of federal HUD money, but so much more than that. Their charge, and Lisa's charge, is to bring together city, county, and many partners to address homelessness in our community. I think Lisa is an exemplary public servant. We're lucky to have her, and I want to welcome her to today's council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm glad to be here. And I want to just start with, in service and support to your ongoing community conversations and development of this very important city master plan, I'd like to start with just briefly providing you a high-level context about Sacramento's homelessness situation. And then I'll be turning it over to Homebase, as Mayor Steinberg mentioned. And Homebase is a national expert on addressing homelessness. And they're going to give an overview of different shelter crisis response models. And it's my hope that you'll have an opportunity to dialogue with Homebase on their experience working with communities across the country, as many different communities are attempting to try to address their unsheltered housing situation. So with that, I do have a brief PowerPoint that I'll go ahead and start. Many of you are familiar with this information and are using it in your respective district forums, but I would just like to have an opportunity to go through it, and then that'll help provide some foundational information. As you know, the issue of homelessness is a huge challenge for Sacramento, like it is for many other California communities. In 2020 and over the course of the year of 2020, our Homeless Management Information System, a database that collects information from services and providers across our homeless response system, has shown that more than 11,000 people experience homelessness over the course of last year. On any given day, we estimate that more than 5,000 people experience homelessness, and the number of homelessness has grown an estimated 19% in recent years per the point-in-time count. The majority of those who experience homelessness in Sacramento are single adults, but there are also many families with children and unaccompanied youth. It's important to know that the different household types require different types of services and supports. We also know that there are racial differences in terms of who experiences homelessness. The majority of the people who live in Sacramento are white, but the majority of those who experience homelessness are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. This is not unique to Sacramento, but racial disparity in homelessness is an issue we need to face and better understand. Your COC has recently established a 21-member racial equity committee with the majority of the members are people of color or have lived experience. The committee's purpose will be to develop a racial equity action plan and to be a resource to review and advise on policies and efforts to address homelessness through a racial equity lens. We know that there is no one single thing that leads to homelessness. Sometimes it is a combination of compounding situations and issues. In one survey, about a third of people reported mental health issues or substance misuse and traumatic events or other social factors as contributing to their homelessness. We know that affordability and being unstably housed is another major issue. The disparity between wages and rental costs is a burden on renters and a barrier for people experiencing homelessness. And the underproduction of housing for very low and low-income households is also not helping. With no one cause, there is also no one solution. Instead, there are a variety of approaches that are used to help house our unsheltered neighbors. In Sacramento, you have teams that are conducting outreach in the streets to help connect people to programs. You have short-term shelter, which includes emergency shelters and transitional housing. There is also longer-term housing programs such as rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. Today, as we mentioned, we're going to dig deeper into temporary short-term shelter models, but we also mustn't lose sight of the need to successfully house people as an ultimate solution to resolving their homelessness. This is a system that people do not necessarily travel in any singular way or enter at any one particular place. People's situations are different and they all need different kinds of support. But with the variety and types of programs for different kinds of needs, our goal is to try and meet people where they are. As was mentioned on the first slide, with more than 11,000 people engaging with the response system in 2020, almost 50% of them were new or re-engaged to the system. The good news, though, is that 2,700 people found their way out of homelessness with the support of the interventions we showed on the previous slide. About 4,400 people continue to receive support or remain connected at year's end, and another chunk of people are no longer engaged in the system. In most cases, we're not sure why. They may have found housing on their own or received support from outside of the system. Continued improvement in data collection and analysis is necessary for our continued awareness and understanding of our situation in Sacramento. Lastly, we need engagement and coordination of many agencies, and really everyone has a role to play. Homelessness is a community-wide concern. We applaud the council for addressing the urgent need, and as your COC lead, I also encourage the continued collaboration to collectively address the longer-term systemic fixes that are needed to really reduce homelessness in Sacramento. My hope is that we can obtain a greater line of sight into the system through joint conversations, efforts, and partnerships. With the high level of complexity, we need the major institutions to work together to continue to learn, iterate, and yes, act on the issues of homelessness. For a future council workshop, it's our hope we can share a multi-agency operational model that is working in other communities across the nation to end or substantially reduce homelessness. At this point, I would like to introduce Patrick Mibsmore and Maddie Nation from Homebase. As I mentioned, Homebase is a national nonprofit focused on advancing solutions to end homelessness. They have more than 35 years of experience and are joining us today to give us an overview of strategies for addressing unsheltered homelessness and shelter crisis response models. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Welcome to Patrick Wigmore. Tell us what's working around the nation, please.
Sounds good, Mayor Sandberg. Thank you, councilmen and women, for having us. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Maddie Nation, to get us started.
Hello, everybody. So Lisa already said it. We have 35, not us specifically, but our organization has 35 years of experience in addressing homelessness across the country. And we're based out of San Francisco, but we've worked extensively in Sacramento for the past 10 years, especially working very closely with the continuum of care. We're working with many communities who are facing this exact issue, a huge rise in unsheltered homelessness, and it is a desire to do better by its citizens. So I'm gonna, Patrick, do you want to introduce yourself
Sure.
and talk a little bit about your experience?
My name is Patrick Wigmore. I'm a deputy director at Homebase. And for the last 15 years, I've helped communities both directly and then in a consulting basis through Homebase with primarily the topic of unsheltered homelessness. And so I've written strategic plans for New York City, the city of San Antonio. I've done extensive work across California as well too for the issue of unsheltered. And then over the last 2 or 3 years, Maddie and I have started doing a lot of work around the issue of alternate shelter models. And so that's what we wanted to talk with you about today.
Great. So for our agenda today, we're going to give a broad overview of the strategies for addressing unsheltered homelessness and call out a couple of examples of what is currently happening in Sacramento. It's definitely not an exhaustive list, but just to give you kind of an idea of all of the different parts. And then we're going to really dive into the crisis response models specifically, what they look like, what their typical components are. We even have some pictures for you to help contextualize them. So that will be the bulk of our presentation today. And then finally, at the end, we'll talk about promising practices and key considerations for selection. So as we've worked with other communities, we've picked up some tips and tricks for how to do this, how to go about deciding which models will work best for your community. So this is just to give you a sense of the goals, but we've already talked about that. So to dive right into the spectrum of ways to address unsheltered homelessness. So we've broadly grouped these into 4 categories: reducing inflow, so reducing the number of folks who become homeless at the front end, the crisis response, housing stabilization, and then public space management. You'll see by looking at this graphic that there are different components of the system that are primarily responsible at different points of the continuum of the spectrum, with public systems really having a huge role at reducing inflow and public space management, but city and county governments being essential partners throughout. So even though we have a homeless response system, even though we have a continuum of care that is leading many elements of that response system and receiving federal funding to do so, there needs to be continuous investment from city and county governments to meet the huge need of unsheltered folks in the community. So to reduce inflow, you're focused on preventing people from entering homelessness and reducing the pressure on and cost of other systems. Reducing the inflow and reducing the folks that will eventually enter shelter and enter supportive housing obviously is a cheaper approach overall, and the one that most centers the folks who are going to be served. So for this slide, we talk a little bit about the Sacramento Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is a rental assistance program that was stood up to assist COVID-impacted families and prevent their homelessness. We've also highlighted the housing problem solving model being promoted by Sacramento's Continuum of Care. So housing problem solving is a strategy that is being implemented across the country. It is flexible funds that can be used to address the one-off financial needs of individuals experiencing homelessness or those that may become homeless otherwise. So those funds can be used for things like credit repair, application fees, all of those sorts of things that can help someone maintain housing and not become homeless in the first place. There are also a number of other prevention programs happening in Sacramento as well. One led by the Sacramento County Adult Protective Services and one by the Wind Youth Services and Waking the Village folks. Moving right ahead, crisis response, quick access to services and shelters essential for those in crisis. One highlight here is the Mental Health Access Team, which provides access to the full spectrum of behavioral health resources, including some housing resources as well. We also have street outreach teams that provide on-the-ground work to connect folks to services, shelter, and housing. Housing stabilization can make the crisis response more effective. We have the Landlord Incentive Program, which provides a one-time bonus for landlords who have not participated in the voucher program for more than 1 year, application fee, security deposit assistance, all those sorts of things, as well as the extensive permanent supportive housing system in Sacramento. There are 2,400 units, and they are highly successful in keeping people with complex needs housed. Finally, public space management. We have COVID response that led to the installation of hand washing stations and toilets across the county, and a couple other programs as well. So moving to shelter crisis response models, I'm going to turn it back to Patrick.
Next slide. Thanks, Maddie. I think the key for each of these models, so first they're non-traditional crisis response models that communities are doing, and a lot of these are in exploratory mode. So I think for each of these, communities tend to learn a lot, Sacramento included, as they've done many of these that we're going to highlight. But then there's also each of these models, given the newness and the lack of best practices for each of them, there's going to be local variations, and each community and each program, even within a community, oftentimes is implemented in different ways. And I think one of the key things that we've talked about is to try to find a handful of models and explore them, because you're going to learn lessons learned and best practices yourself as you try each of the model locally. Next slide. So sanctioned encampments is a broad term, and I think for a lot of these too, trying to define them is a bit of a struggle as well too. For me, a sanctioned encampment is a city-approved campground or a area of the city that is designated by the community to be able to operate. It can be self-governed or it can be operated by a nonprofit as well too, and it's about 50-50 for each of those. The capacity of sanctioned encampments really varies. Some can be large, some can be very small. They can be tents that are given to the community, or as like in the picture that you see here, it's a hodgepodge of tents that the individuals brought. I think it's a little hard to say as we say who's best served by each model. I think for sanctioned encampments, so we're just kind of taking a leap on who we think is best to target for this model, would really be the chronically homeless and individuals that resist formal programs. So as you're clearing encampments or as you're working with individuals, sanctioned encampments allow you a way for an individual, especially chronic, who may have been in and out of shelter many, many times, to have a way to have one place where a service individual can work with them and be able to help build them on their path, maybe to a traditional shelter, but hopefully into permanent housing. And then there's some local community examples as well too. Next slide. Safe parking is another program that we see quite a bit across the country, and especially across California. I think it's very different than sanctioned encampments in that it's more targeted towards, oftentimes those are employed individuals. Obviously they need to have a working vehicle to be able to have a safe parking. But safe parking lots can be, they're usually overnight places where individuals can come safely spend the night. There usually is access to facilities, be it bathrooms or showers. And then oftentimes there is, on the start and the end of the available times for the safe parking, outreach workers that work in the community will come to these facilities or locations and work with the individuals. And it's a great way to be able to make sure that people know the benefits that they can sign up for, know where they can get assistance. And like Maddie talked about, it's a great way to offer very low cost services such as car repair or other kind of small amounts of services that could be very beneficial to this population. Next slide. Rvs and trailer facilities are very similar to safe parking, except they target those that have recreational vehicles. These can be done at both sanctioned sites, meaning they could be RV facilities. In Sonoma County, they use RV facilities that were open for the general public, or they can also create your own as well too. There's been local examples as well as across California where multiple RVs can congregate. Again, best served for households with probably slightly higher service needs. You tend to find with the population for RVs, it tends to be more veterans or more chronically homeless individuals, and there tends to be a lot more need for keeping the RVs operational, but it can be a much lower cost process than even trying to stand up a shelter perhaps. And then you also have one location where outreach workers can try to work with the same individual over a long period of time, build the relationship that's required, and try to get that individual or family onto the path to housing. Structured tents are a little bit different than the sanctioned encampments in that they are created by usually city or nonprofit agencies. They tend to be usually a bit larger, between 50 and 100 tents. I think the key thing is that they are, as best that they can be, to try to be hardened for the elements. So as you have inclemental weather or dangerous weather conditions, the aspect of structured tents, be it like the one you see in the picture here, or sprung structures, which are more military style tents as well too, can really stand up to the elements much better than just tents that you would use for camping. We've seen this model quite a bit across California. The state has not been trying to push it, but they certainly have been advocating the use of trying to bring individuals into this type of structure. I think it best serves individuals who are more comfortable to be served in a congregate setting. It's in many ways similar to congregate style shelter, but much quicker to create. And then you also, a lot of the models that do this have very temporary nature in which they are sited. So in San Francisco, for example, when they do a lot of their temporary structures, they do them for a 3 to 4 year term, which is still a very long time, but it allows for neighborhoods to at least feel that this is not a permanent position being brought into their community. And then as some communities have done, even shorter time for under a year. Next slide. Tough sheds or pallet shelters. There again, these have many different names. These are quick, oftentimes either off-site or on-site constructed. Oftentimes I see these done on city or county land where zoning won't be an issue. They're frequently done either with co-location like you see in this picture, or they can be sometimes done individually across large scales area, although definitely more congregate setting is usually, I think, the best model. This serves, in my opinion, individuals with high to low service needs, but who are uncomfortable in a congregate setting, given they will have an individual unit where they can sit, especially for individuals who may have mental health issues or drug and alcohol addictions. It can be an incentive to be able to bring them from an unsheltered situation, and not for them, at least, not to have to worry about rule compliance or trying to fit into a structured environment. And again, you have some of these locally, and there's quite a few California examples we can point you to as well. Host homes are, frequently see these oftentimes for transitional age youth population. So it's a flexible temporary accommodation with a community host. It can be short-term or long-term. They're oftentimes targeted towards the TAY population because it's a very easy way to get them into a program. Often there'll be multiple other youth that are staying in the host home. It can be an easy way to keep them connected to the educational system and make sure that they're much higher level of supervision than you might get at shelter. And it also helps sometimes with age restrictions and other concerns about putting transitional age youth into shelter that communities have been concerned about. Next slide. So that is it for the non-traditional shelters. Maddie, I think you're going to handle the next two.
So the next model we wanted to highlight were hotel or motel vouchers. So we're moving from more of the non-traditional sort of temporary things that communities typically set up just for a set period of time to some of our more kind of traditional sheltering models that we've seen in communities for quite a while. And this is just to give a bit of a contrast and give you the full spectrum. So hotel or motel vouchers, these are temporary vouchers given to individuals experiencing homelessness to reside in a hotel or motel room. They best serve individuals that are uncomfortable in congregate settings because it will just be obviously one household in that room. And there are a couple different Sacramento examples and examples across the state. People implement it different ways. The Project Room Key non-congregate shelters have been long-term sheltering interventions to try to prevent COVID spread among individuals experiencing homelessness. But we also have some programs in Sacramento that do kind of more one-off or week-long voucher programs as well. Scattered site shelter. So these are apartments or houses scattered across a geographic area that act as shelter. Typically the lease would be in the provider's name. This is actually a really unique model and something that is happening in Sacramento, and we've featured in other communities as Sacramento being the model. So Sacramento's rehousing shelter run by Sacramento Self-Help Housing is the example here. And that is multiple individuals who would just live in a single family home together with one sort of peer manager who oversees operation of the house. Congregate shelter, this is really your traditional shelter. So one building where folks live together and shelter together. The capacity can be highly variable depending on the size of the building, and it best serves individuals who are comfortable in that congregate setting, who can live together. And there are several examples in Sacramento of this. And then
Haven,
Patrick.
yep. Yeah, Haven for Hope. So I wrote the City of San Antonio strategic plan, and I think Haven for Hope gets used a lot and frequently by communities, and it oftentimes means very different things. So for me, and I'm looking just at what the City of San Antonio funds with their Haven for Hope program, it really is a catch-all, and it really encompasses all of the materials from outreach all the way to permanent supportive housing that communities do. But I think with the difference being everything is done within one campus. And so it's right outside the downtown area of the city of San Antonio. But this campus model allows for individuals to move directly from unsheltered housing into shelter on the campus, possibly into permanent housing, all within the same data system and obviously the same physical location. And so, I think the capacity is going to be highly variable if you're trying to recreate this model based on the size and the funding, and it is a very expensive model. The city of San Antonio pays a lot of money to be able to do this, but it allows you to have multiple households and singles and individuals and really have a one-stop shop for all of your community's needs. I think the two key components at the bottom that you'll see that are very different, and this is where I think people get confused with the Haven for Hope model, is there's two aspects to it. There's a courtyard, which is where unsheltered individuals, which look in many ways like some of the models that Maddie and I have talked about, where people are sleeping outdoors, but with services and with mats that they are given, and they have access to services. And then as they progress through the campus, they move on into the permanent side, which is called campus, and the campus model, which really looks like many of the secondary examples that Maddie just gave. And so I think oftentimes I see communities pick or choose, I want to build a courtyard or I want to build a whole campus model. But at least for me, if you're going to just say the Haven for Hope, you should look at it holistically as one whole model to be able to judge it correctly. Next slide. Oh, question. Go ahead, Maddie, you can finish your thought.
Great. So this is just an overview of the non-traditional and traditional shelter crisis response models that we talked about, just to help you solidify what we talked about. So sanctioned encampments, safe parking, RV and trailers, structured tents, tough sheds and pallet structures, and host homes are more of our non-traditional models, things that folks are innovating with. There's a lot of opportunity to learn as you scale up those models. And then hotel, motel vouchers, scattered site shelter, and congregate shelter are more traditional models we see implemented across the country, and things that a lot of people think about when you think about emergency shelter traditionally. And then the Haven for Hope and campus model is sort of an integration of both, as Patrick was talking about. There are elements that are really like the non-traditional models of people sleeping outside with access to services and bathrooms. And then some elements as well of traditional shelter crisis, as are the more traditional model with a much more built up sort of infrastructure and buildings and services and access to different things. So moving on to promising practices and key considerations for selection. So there are a ton of questions to ask when you're trying to figure out which shelter model would work the best within your community specifically. The number one question to always ask is, how will this shelter connect clients to permanent housing? You want shelter to be a temporary stop by. You don't want folks getting stuck in shelter, and you want to make sure that there are adequate supportive services so folks are able to move to permanent housing. So that is the number one question. The second question is about how long will it be set up? In some cases, it makes sense to just set up a temporary model. So a structured tent for 2 months while you work to solidify a more traditional model. Sometimes that doesn't make sense. So how long will the project be operating? How much is it going to cost? Where is it going to be located, which the siting plan will help you find out. What is the estimated operating cost per unit? There can be some hidden costs that can be really tricky. So we saw a lot of communities with their COVID response start using RVs for quarantine isolation, but the electricity bills for RVs cannot be easily monitored and can go through the roof sometimes. So thinking about those sorts of things. What's a long-term staffing plan look like? Who's going to live there, especially for some of those more non-traditional models? Who does the temporary shelter model work best for? Who are we trying to serve and who will not be served? What types of services will we provide? And then will there be bathroom and kitchen access? And will we be providing laundry or meals if folks don't have those things available to them in the model? So those are just a couple key questions. Patrick?
Yep, and I think for cost estimates, the support services are going to be the large aspect for these costs that are really equal across the model. It's the same cost to have outreach workers and case managers. And we certainly can provide anecdotal information about the cost for each of these shelter type, but they're going to vary greatly by community, by the provider, and then by the target population, and also just what resources you have available within your community. So we put together at least some anecdotal ideas of what we've experienced across the country working around these models. I mean, they certainly kind of go in order of the same way that we presented them, with operating costs probably being the much kind of larger variable, as well as some of the development side as well too. I think for me, the promising practices for selection when working with communities is one, as I talked about when I started, just try to pick one or two models and focus on piloting that and scaling, because you're going to learn a lot of lessons as you do each of these programs. Identify what are the obtainable goals and make sure that they're shared widely with the community. And certainly community involvement and communication with these programs are very critical, given they're not traditional shelter models that the communities may be used to. As Maddie, Mayor Steinberg, Lisa has talked about too, make sure that each model is housing focused. This is not meant to be the end location for individuals. It's meant to be a temporary location as people cycle through the system to become housed. Ensure that there are clear timelines and end dates for the short-term programs, and that you have flexible funding integrated within the programs that allows you to have the flexibility. So especially when they're city funds, that they really have, the staff have the ability to work with the clients and aren't burdened by cumbersome rules. Use HMIS and the data systems that you have as much as you can to be able to track people, so you're not creating these programs in isolation. And then finally, leverage the local opportunities. Go to the next slide. Each community is going to have different things that we've seen. So in Hawaii, we worked with the community to have, they had spare buses. So Hawaii was proposing to be able to use the buses to really drive down the development costs. Stockton, California used horse stables. I worked in the city of San Antonio. They had unfortunately had to cut their fire department. So they had a lot of firehouses. And so they worked to be able to turn those into temporary use shelters as well too. And then finally, some communities have different things in excess. So like Los Angeles had a lot of underused single parking garages. And so they've proposed to try to turn those into congregate or to single site shelters like we talked about. So it's really just using what the community has in a way that can be beneficial for driving down costs and being able to site these in an opportune way. I think that's it for our, yep.
Thank you both very, very much. Ms.
Are we doing questions now, Mayor? Or?
Well, I think, why don't we go through the presentation and then we'll have the panelists, all of them, available for questions. Is that okay?
You're the mayor.
Hey, it's big power here, let me tell you. Let's now move to a discussion of large campus solutions, which a lot of folks in the community have alluded to, but we have not actually grappled with as we've been trying to meet the emergency and as we've been trying to site shelter. But the large campus solution has some obvious advantages. Larger numbers of people to help, maybe economies of scale, maybe comprehensive, the the comprehensive approach. So we, as I said earlier, we have Dr. Lubarsky, who has sort of led on his own a task force of healthcare systems and other community leaders to dive into this over the last 2 years. And he's joined by Chet Hewitt, the CEO of Sierra Health. Give us the big picture here, will you, gentlemen? Please.
I think, Chet, you're going first, right?
Yes, I am going to go first, and I apologize to everyone for not being on screen, but I'm actually doing double duty. I'm back in my car. I thought I'd be on a little bit earlier. But I will say this, this issue is so important that I would not have someone stand in for me. I actually really wanted to be here to be part of the conversation. So pardon my blank screen, but just know that my heart and head is into this work in many ways that's been described by many of the council members. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the council members for their reinvigorated interest. And I say reinvigorated because I know that many of you have been working on this even before some of you were on the council around this issue around homelessness. And, you know, it is the scourge of a modern day society to see the level of homelessness that we're seeing across the city of Sacramento and indeed across this country. Around the integrative care campus model, I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Lebowski for almost 2 years now on this particular project. We started out by convening the healthcare system members and a large group of elected officials to really talk about the need for an integrative care campus that would serve the 1,600 to 2,000 individuals who are chronically homeless and who have serious mental health and substance abuse issues as well. And for us, this is part of a stepwise process. Clearly, there are folks who just need access to affordable housing. And clearly, there are many folks who may have some more minor issues of various sorts that they need to deal with in terms of getting them stably housed. But we know that the folks that we were focusing on integrated care campus model were folks who we know had a high level of need, could benefit from co-located services, that would be health and human services, along with dental and pharmacy and employment-related services, because it is not a destination for folks to be living in forever, but one that would allow folks to take a stepwise process to be fully reintegrated in the community with the capacity to actually do so successfully. And it is not as the fallback into the system by making sure that there was enough services out there as possible to prevent that from happening. And clearly that will happen to some folks given the issues that we were talking about folks having. These are folks who have serious mental health and other issues, but clearly building a system of care that would be able to accommodate their very specific and high intensity needs as well. There are numerous reasons to do this, and I know that Dr. Lebowski will talk about many of them, from overcrowded ED departments and hospitals, would put the risk of everyone in the community at higher risk, to just the moral calling of trying to do well from folks who are struggling with mental health and other comorbidities who are living in the streets of our city. A couple of things I want to say really quickly. This kind of work requires city-county partnerships. The behavioral health, mental health, and other systems of care and services that are under the county's control, you'll have to be part of that delivery mechanism for this high need population as well. Two, that this is not simply about the large systems and the well-meaning folks who are participating in this particular meeting, that there has to be a significant level of community engagement. I said that we started our work convening elected officials and heads of the large hospital and healthcare delivery systems. We have now moved on to convening a lot of the community homeless advocates to get their input and their perspective about what a campus model could look like. I also want to say that we're not, do not envision the old-fashioned campus model that simply house people in what I would describe as some deplorable conditions. I'll date myself on this, but my first job in New York City was at Willowbrook State School. And if you know the history of those large campuses, you know what Willowbrook State School actually represents. incredibly dense environments, incredibly low levels of care for folks who were, I would say, marooned, stranded in those campuses. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about humane campuses that allow people to move towards their optimum level of health with the level of care and compassion that they deserve. And so that would be housing and all the other attendance services that people would need as well. Clearly, Haven for Hope is one of those models. There's the Trieste model in Italy that we were looking at because we were being very expansive in our review of the knowledge base that's actually out there, with the intention of coming up with something that was uniquely designed for Sacramento, and that we know that we can employ and do the kind of extraordinary job that this population deserves. And I'll just end by saying, before I turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Dr. Lebarsky, that while COVID and other things have made this journey a little bit more difficult and more challenging, as many of us have had to shift issues to also accommodate that particular crisis, I just want to say that this has not fallen off in terms of our interest or commitment. I think that it has been delayed somewhat, but even while we begin to focus on immediate short-term issues coming out of the tragedy that we saw during the winter storm, my push is to also think about those longer-term interventions, building off the Haven for Hope and other similar models. That's also going to be necessary if we're going to meet the moral calling that we actually have to see that everyone who's experiencing homeless, and particularly the chronically homeless, those with significant comorbidities, also are going to be served in the most appropriate, cost-efficient, and most importantly, humane and developmental way possible. So with that, let me stop, and I will turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Dr. Lebarsky.
Thank you very much.
Chet, that was great. And I want to thank you for being such a great partner. I'm sorry that Peter Bailenson isn't here, because he was sort of the third leg of the stool as we were talking about how we could all work together to restore dignity, and not only for those people who are experiencing homelessness, but for all of us. I live downtown, and I want to do something more than walk by someone who's shivering and cold and needs a meal, and maybe I can provide that, but not much else. And we need a system of care that takes care of the most affected individuals. And that's really important, because as we've heard, we need a coalition of everyone. We need the public, we need our community, we need our dedicated civil servants who are already doing yeoman's work trying to take care of this population. We need our elected officials, we need our business community, and we need our health systems all pulling in the same direction. And one of the things that prevents that from happening is a fear, actually, especially on the public's part, that those people who are most effective will bring aggressiveness, combativeness, and insoluble problems to their backyard, which is why we get NIMBYism. And so as I looked, I only moved here 2.5 years ago. This is not my first foray into homelessness or homelessness solutions. I came from Miami. I was heavily involved in the Camillus House, which is a high barrier to entry homeless solution with a campus-like model, as well as outreach programs under the bridges with local FQHCs, because I worked in the health system downtown. And so I understand many of the problems that exist in many different communities. This community actually has an opportunity to aggressively and definitively address this, because the people of Sacramento are actually generous and kind-hearted, and more Midwestern perhaps, which is a good thing, in terms of their belief in their fellow human beings. And I think that if we could just take care of the most affected individuals in a comprehensive manner and address their very long-term problems. It's not an overnight solution. It's not housing. It is not a meal. It is not a handout. It is a comprehensive whole person care approach lasting many months with supportive treatments medication-assisted treatment for drug abuse issues, intensive both inpatient and outpatient psychiatric care, housing for sure, and then learning how to reintegrate into society for people who have not been part of a social structure for many years. And it's a minority of the homeless population, but that minority scares other people from wanting to help more. So if we aggressively dealt with this in a campus-like model, where we gathered those who were most affected and could surround them with the types of care and the types of support that they need to begin to get better. And we developed some end house and support housing solutions so people could move off of that campus. It's not an end point, right? It is a transit point. We could really see things turn around, because right now, we just throw up our hands. Many people in our community throw up our hands because we just can't fathom that we could help those people, but we can. And so I will just say that UC Davis Health is absolutely committed to doing this. We see, unfortunately, and waste tremendous amounts of money in a revolving door, taking care of more than 3,000 unique homeless individuals just last year. Some we see innumerable numbers, innumerable times. And interestingly, they're not uninsured. 93% of them have insurance, where the state is spending money for us to take really, and all of the health systems, mediocre care of people who need not an acute care hospital, but a comprehensive, supportive, intensive outpatient environment, such as a campus might provide. So we have this opportunity to redirect funds, to reinvest, to take some of the mental health and behavioral health funding that hopefully the county will contribute, since it gets the bulk of all of that, to create a comprehensive solution for the most effective individuals. And we've produced 2 white papers. One was supported by the California Healthcare Foundation, the other by UC Davis, about all of the campus models that are out there in the United States of America, which are working, which are not working, and why. Joy Melnikow was the lead author on that first white paper that we produced. And the second one was, the primary author was Jeffrey Hotch, who's our healthcare economist, who looked at the specific costs in a range of solutions for creating a comprehensive care model. And it's not really that expensive once we get it up and running. And there are interim steps that we can take, whether it is just creating mobile vans to go visit encampments where the most affected people are most found, or is it a hotel takeover in the way that we did whole person care, Daryl, that you did for the city not that long ago, that really took good care of a smaller number of people. We can start there. And I can guarantee you that there's a coalition of the willing out there who are willing to help and willing to figure out, how do we get more services to more people who need it the most? And once you do that, then actually providing an economic hand up to those people who have minor health issues, or where depression has forced them to lose their job, and where they simply need a little bit of psychiatric and psychology care and some money to get back into an apartment, that becomes easy, because you've separated those individuals out, frankly, from people that landlords don't want in their apartments, right? So if we can take care of those most effective individuals together, it will be easier for the rest of the community to come together to take care of the majority who simply need a little bit of help. I'll just stop there and just say I am convinced that the only way forward for us to solve the problems that we have, and this is a city that can actually solve the problem before it is insoluble, that this is the way forward. It's not a campus or other solutions. It is a campus and other solutions geared to different categories of the homeless who need different levels of both service and different types of help, as you all know. So thank you very much.
Dr. Lubarsky, since this is an introduction and we're going to continue this next week, I agree completely with you, but we're going to get into the question of where, because once we are able to come to some agreement as a city and county on the where, I think the rest of it will be relatively easy. Okay, last presentation. Chris Jones, the board president, Hope for Sacramento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, everyone. Chris Jones, President of Hope for Sacramento. We're a community organization that is just concerned Sacramentans coming together to promote the Haven for Hope model. You heard about it from Mr. Whitmore and Dr. Labarsky just recently. So I will give a very brief overview of what it looks like and then what kind of results that we hope to see out of this if we can move down that path. So as was discussed, it is a low barrier. There is a two-part campus. You have the low barrier courtyard where people can take refuge as needed as they're experiencing homelessness. They can come and go. They can bring their partners, their possessions, their pets, access like meals, showers, sleeping areas, like medical services and mental health outreach. And those people are just safe from the various hazards of sleeping on the street, whether that be weather, as we saw, or assault or robbery, or sometimes even murder, unfortunately. But where people really gain the benefit of the Haven for Hope campus is on the transformational campus side, which is voluntary when people are ready in their journey to address the issues that are contributing to their homelessness, mostly mental health and substance abuse issues that we're seeing. They can go into a residential treatment program where they stay there and they can get assistance for those things as well as job placement and training and be transitioned over to permanent housing. And some of the really good results that are being seen in San Antonio and that me and my group say that we have the real opportunity and obligation to try to achieve these ourselves is that the downtown homelessness count over the last 10 years in San Antonio is down by 80% adjusted for population growth. Over 5,200 people have been moved into permanent housing and 88% of those people are still housed after a year. 3,200 people have gained employment coming out of the transformational campus. Over the period of time that Haven for Hope has been open, the city and the county of San Antonio and Bexar County, respectively, have saved almost $100 million in cost avoidance in their emergency rooms and their courthouses and their jails. There is a lot of just benefit to co-locating these services, as Dr. Labarsky just mentioned. And I'll segue into say that it is in a collaborative model. We're not asking that the Haven for Hope model replace what we've got so far. We think that the services that the city and county are putting out there are important and will continue to be so. But we need to add this as a centralized hub and a collaborative space where our existing service partners can come together and really just provide the wraparound services that people need and divert them from the criminal justice system and catch them before their mental health crises become fatal for themselves or anyone else. So to that end, we've met with a lot of you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council. We've kind of gone over this. You guys have expressed support so far, so we really appreciate that, getting us on the agenda here. We've also met with a lot of the Board of Supervisors at the county level, because ultimately this is going to require them as well. So we ask that the city, the county, our private sector, the health systems, all work together to make this a reality so that we can really serve the people who are desperate out there on the streets for assistance. And we can really turn the tide of homelessness. We've seen it increase over time, but we have an opportunity and a calling really to be an example, not only for our fellow citizens here in Sacramento, but in California and the entire country. So I'll conclude just to ask that we really take a deep dive and a real look at this Haven for Hope campus style model in conjunction with the county and our private sector partners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Oh, thank you to all the panelists. Madam Clerk, how many members of the public do we have called in?
I have 6 callers so far.
Okay, why don't we take the public testimony and then we'll turn it to the city council for a discussion.
Thank you. May I have my first caller, please? Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, my name is Ben Slobodnik. I'm a medical student with Sacramento Street Medicine, and I'm calling in to urge the cessation of police sweeps that have been going on in past months throughout Sacramento. These street cleanups and beautification projects, like the one by Morrison Creek, these have kind of swept the issue under the rug. Many of these people have been living in these communities for months and some even years, and now they're being moved from their place of residence against their will, and it's kind of in this veiled attempt of calling these, quote unquote, beautification projects. And it just seems as though the city is trying to sweep under the rug the harsh reality that they're uprooting people from their homes in the process. And having visited, multiple of these camps, it's obvious to me that these people need services like sanitation stations, social services, and of course, access to basic health care. And the presence of police is the exact opposite of that. Their presence only heightens tensions in the community, and the danger of police violence is always there. And so I'm calling on the city council to cease these sweeps and instead provide needed services like health care, sanitation services, and social workers and similar. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, City Council. This is John Myers from Midwesterner from District 4, speaking in support of Hope for Sacramento. The Hope for Sacramento concept of a centrally located facility actually addresses the enormous humanitarian and social impacts from the current homeless situation in Sacramento. Bottom line, if Hope for Sacramento facility was online today, providing both the needed capacity and a path to wellness, the deaths and suffering we saw in January would not have occurred. Likewise, the untreated mental illness and addiction in Sacramento streets would be better served in a facility that provides true wraparound services. However, way too often we also forget the social cost of unaddressed homelessness. People living in our parks, our riverfronts, our neighborhoods, safety concerns for children walking to school, and people walking out at night, impacts to already struggling businesses, impacts to overfilled ER rooms. Hope for Sacramento would have the capacity to address the Boise versus Martin restrictions on camping enforcement. So in summary, Hope for Sacramento provides a humanitarian, cost-effective path to dignity and wellness for Sacramento's homeless. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Nola Boyer. I'm in District 3. I am with Hope for Sacramento. We want to provide a comprehensive, collaborative program providing all necessary services in one safe location. Hope for Sacramento is modeled on the Haven for Hope in San Antonio, Texas. Since Haven for Hope opened 11 years ago, they have seen over 5,225 people exit their transformational campus into permanent housing. After 1 year, 88% stayed housed. 3,207 people obtained employment, more now, but those are the latest figures. There's been an 80% reduction in downtown homelessness in 10 years. They have 184 partners providing over 300 services. They have a combined substance and mental health program that provides one treatment program, and it lasts approximately 120 days. That has resulted in 3,323 less jail bookings and $80,000 cost savings to the ER. Over $2 million cost savings to police. 8,275 people moved from their courtyard setting to levels of higher residential care. They have provided over 40,000 quality medical, dental, and vision services. Over 300 U.S. cities have visited Haven for Hope. This is a city-county collaborative effort. We want to work with all current providers to help us obtain this level of service for our homeless in Sacramento. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, Council. My name is James Zoe. I'm a med student with Sacramento Valley Street Med. I'm here to talk about the cessation of police street sweeps. So the council has convened today to address both the homelessness problem in large, as well as trying to address the needs of homeless people out on the streets currently. One of the needs that is particular to me and my future occupation as a physician is the medical care of homeless people. So we at Sacramento Valley Street Med like to think that there are probably 3 good reasons why street sweeps present risks to the homeless population of Sacramento. 1 would be a threat to their physical safety. 2 would be the fragmentation of primary care that we can serve them in their camps. And 3 would be the lack of sanitation and infectious disease spread, which is particularly pertinent during this time of pandemic. And as some of our previous speakers have mentioned, the cost of and the problem of homeless people going to emergency departments is something that can be addressed, but is being targeted by these police street sweeps. So these risk factors actually represent themselves very well in some of the data that we have, which show that homeless survival rate, and we're just talking about median survival lifespan, is actually drastically reduced to 43 in women and 50-something in males, which is an extreme drop-off from the 70s that we're used to. There are some trade-offs. We do understand that these camps aren't exactly, they're kind of in a legal gray area, but we feel that with the stated goals.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yes, we feel that the trade-off of the legal gray area versus the benefit of stopping police street sweeps is in favor of stopping police street sweeps.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Louis Demas, a resident of District 4. The doubling of the homeless population demonstrates that the well-intentioned and well-funded policies have not been as effective as desired. A comprehensive full-service regional campus with a county, city, and private partnership is a solution as demonstrated by the decade-long success story in San Antonio. Hope for Sacramento has identified 5 possible sites for such a campus. This was done by identifying the features necessary for a successful operation. The criteria for location first focuses on meeting the needs of the homeless community in providing low-barrier facilities, traditional programs with co-location of already existing programs to provide full wraparound service in a safe environment. The remaining criteria focuses on the need of the general community and acquisition and construction costs. Hope for Sacramento asked the City Council to adopt the San Antonio Comprehensive Homeless Service Model for Sacramento and to develop site selection criteria to bring the project to fruition. Hope for Sacramento looks forward to working with the City Council and the Sacramento County Supervisors to develop criteria for site selection. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Yes, thank you. Richard Wake, City Council, District 5. I wasn't able to see all of the presentation today, but what I did catch was what seems to be completely lacking here, and it has been now for quite some time, is the lack of respect for the people, for the residents and the constituents here at Sacramento. You know, I even hear that, that even, hear this from the most fiercest of homeless advocates, that business owners and property owners and homeowners need to be respected. I'm just wondering, how much longer is it going to take for us to get relief down here in Southland Park? This is going on all over the city, no question about that. But, a lot of people down here, including businesses that are at the South Hill Shopping Center, apartments on Riverside Boulevard, homeowners, we're tired of the crime. We're tired of the people defecating in our lawns. We're tired of all of this. And, not only just that, we're tired of the misstatements and the lies that are being told by various administrators in the city and some of the city council members that are sitting up there in the dais. The parking garage is open at 10th downtown at 10th and L. We were told by Miss Dean that people were going to be put into that garage. We have over 20 vehicles on Riverside Boulevard now, including a motorhome and a trailer that was dropped there that's hitched up to nothing. When is the impact team going to get down there? I was told by Chris Conlon today that it's not possible to do that because of COVID, and that's not true. The city can move these people into the parking garage. And, I have a lot of respect for a lot of the people that, for the homeless people. I'm doing my part, but this is just no longer it just can't be. It can't be this way any longer. Riverside Boulevard needs to get cleaned up. We're tired of the crime.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yeah, we're tired of the crime and we're tired of the people crapping on our lawns. Please clean up Riverside Boulevard immediately.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, everyone. This is Rose Cabral with District 6. I'm calling in today. I wanted to see the presentation. I did attend the District 8 and District 6 neighborhood meetings this past week on the unhoused conversation. But what I'm gathering from this meeting, I would like to hear from those who are actually working with our unhoused neighbors. It's not clear to me that the organizations who gave these presentations actually have people who are experienced with our unhoused population. I believe the first presentation by Home Base stated that they've been doing this work for over 10 years in Sacramento. I might be getting this wrong, but if they have been doing this work in Sacramento, I'd like to see the specifics of what they've accomplished and are unhoused in that time. And I've seen local organizations here in Sacramento that are already doing all of the work described, including Mental Health First, the Sacramento Regional Coalition to End Homelessness, the Sacramento Homeless Union, and we even had a tiny home village called Compassion Village that was really successful until the city took it down. So I also want to mention that many of the organizations I just mentioned have been stepping up in a really big way this past week to ensure our warming center can remain open. And so a big shout out to all of those volunteers who aren't getting paid at all, whereas we have these companies who are making millions of dollars, and where is that money going? There's a disconnect there. Lastly, I want to mention, I would really like to see the City Council get training on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, to inform the decisions that you're making. And I would like to see some education and learning about the language that can be used in describing our unhoused population, so that we can all have a better understanding of how we can be more compassionate with the words that we use.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yes, I appreciate this conversation. I'm glad it's happening. I think we just need to continue to think about these things. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. And this is the last caller on this item.
Okay.
Welcome to the meeting. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council. Mr. Mayor, this is the last caller.
Good afternoon, mayors and mayor and members of the Sacramento City Council. My name is Katie Maple. I'm a resident of District 5 on the board of the Oak Park Neighborhood Association and a co-founder of Sac Soup. I really wanted to thank you for taking the time to discuss and implement a strategic plan to address homelessness in Sacramento. I know it's something that's been an issue for a long time, and I know it's something that we all care about. I sent these via email as well, so I'll just go over a few of them, some general suggestions that I have as you think through this plan. One is that we should declare homelessness a humanitarian crisis at the city level, and as well as an ongoing emergency, and declare a right to rest. We should take accountability for past mistakes and learn from them to build trust, not seeking perfection, but transparency and growth. Acknowledge how much money has been spent to date and where it has gone. I know there are a lot of people who are kind of unsure and feel like there's not a lot of transparency in this effort. I don't think that's intentional. I think we just probably need to do a better job of stating that to folks. I would suggest working directly with the unhoused population and advocates, because no one really knows better what they need than the person actually going through it. Of course, we want to address specific disparities, including violence against trans women, the disproportionate representation of communities of color, and targeted policing. Also addressing trauma as a factor, both leading up to and after becoming homeless. And then the need for the county to be a part of this process. And I know that that's not who you are, but I know that there can be an effort made to bring them in, because I don't think a lot of this will happen in a real way unless we can get buy-in from the county. And then just some more specific suggestions are, having more city sanctioned camping and safe ground, continuing to purchase hotels and shelter and housing, identifying and obtaining vacant properties, stopping the police sweeps immediately, and putting money directly toward what people need for prevention. So sometimes it's literally just a SMUD bill, an electricity bill, or some rental assistance that could prevent someone from being on the street. So I think that's a worthy investment. And then, of course, thinking about things like continuing eviction protections and rent control. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. I have no more callers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. I want to first thank our SHRA director, Lachelle Dozier, for suggesting that we bring the home base leadership to the city council, and for the excellent presentation by all the participants. Let's turn it over to the city council. In order, I have Councilmember Valenzuela, Vice Mayor Chenier, and Councilmember Jeff Harris.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I thank everybody for the presentation. I do want to start off by lifting up some of those last comments. I was trying to take notes, but I do think we have an opportunity for a conversation here about what has and has not worked well, what we've been spending money on, what are the lessons we've learned, what are the outcomes we've achieved, so that we could really build on that experience. But I also do want to notice, I was noticing during the presentation, and not questioning the commitment or dedication of anybody on the call, but everybody on this call is a step or two removed from being unhoused or an unhoused service provider directly. And I think, we could really learn a lot from what those folks understand and what they see on the community about what's working and not working, and what their advice would be to us as we move forward. I think a great example, as again was mentioned, is with the Galleria. I mean, they really stepped in and helped us, and partnered with the city to make that model a success downtown over these last few weeks, working unpaid hours. And I know the city manager is working quickly to bring on someone to be paid to help us manage that moving forward, so that, Daniel Bowers doesn't have to be there until 4 a.m. every single night, which I'm sure he might appreciate. But I think there's just a lot we can learn there. And even from our own staff, we had a family walk in on Saturday night. I think it was Saturday or Sunday night. The mom was 9 months pregnant, about to give due any day now. And they walked back out 30 minutes later with the hotel room that Bridget and Danielle were able to secure with them. And Andrew and I worked together, Councilmember Ashby and I, to get that placement done with Danielle and Bridget. And it worked. They walked in the door, and like 10 minutes later, like Bridget was on the phone, and like another 10 minutes later, they were back out the door going someplace where they could be safe and get services in the community. So I think we have just a lot in our community and in our staff and in the agencies that we work with, like SHRA, who are really doing that work. And so I'm wondering if our next workshop could really include their perspective on the lessons learned, and hopefully my internet's okay because I just got a notification, but on their perspective on the lessons learned and what their recommendations might be to help us scale to meet the challenge. But to the specific topic of large congregate shelters, my perspective has always been like a yes and approach. I mean, with the population that's over 10,000 over the course of a year, I think we're really talking about a mixture of most of the options that were put on the table today. And I know that's been a conversation through the 5-point plan that Mayor Pro Tem Ashby and others have been working on, and a whole host of things. And so I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn from Haven for Hope and other models. But I do think that we need to also figure out how we just that ever necessary housing options. And I appreciate Lisa for bringing that up at the beginning. Where do people go after they come in? And I know that's the next part of the conversation, but that is so critical. The number of folks I've met at that warming center who've been in and out of multiple shelters and service opportunities because there is no spot for them to go to permanently is just a problem we'll continue to encounter until we tackle that. I do want to say that the D4 Homelessness Task Force has raised kind of the all of the above: safe camping, safe parking, hotel vouchers, but we've also honed in and to provide a specific site example to the mayor's comments at the beginning of Boys Ranch, which is a county facility that is owned out in the near Rancho Murrieta, I believe, who could provide some opportunities for folks who need really intensive services. And we've really demonstrated how well we can work with regional transit at the Galleria. So maybe we could address transportation barriers to and from, but I've been super excited by conversations that I know Councilmember Harris and others have reached out to partners at the county who are really interested in exploring what that would look like to stand up. So that is one site that I want to put on the table before I finish all of my whole range of comments. And thanks for the time.
Daryl, you're muted.
Yes, I know. I apologize. Councilmember Chenier.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick question, and this is either for Patrick or Maddie. Thank you for the presentation. It's good to see that we've tried or are trying most of the things you put up there. I would argue that while we've done a lot and housed somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 people, with another 5,000 becoming homeless, it's been a difficult treadmill for us. But what we don't really have, and I want to give kudos to the mayor for putting this process together, is really a system. We have a lot of pieces to the puzzle, how they connect with one another, and what's doing well and what's not doing well, I think is a little bit harder to discern. So my hope is that that's what comes out of this. The question that I have, again, either Patrick or Maddie, is you talked about costs, which are understandable and some are high. And again, kudos to the mayor. We've raised a lot of money, both publicly and privately. I think his leadership of the big city mayors, as well as going after some of our health systems for significant dollars to operate. I know like the WX shelter will be running on Kaiser money for the first 2 years that was raised privately. But the question that I have is, have you also, as you've worked with various jurisdictions, looked at funding models? So where the resources come from, how jurisdictions have put the money together, both for one-time costs of maybe standing up a shelter, but I think more importantly, and as you pointed out, the operating costs over time. I know we have, enough money to do what we're doing now for some period of time. Not a lot of wiggle room to do more or new. I don't think we'll see what happens in the state budget and the federal budget. But I guess the question is, funding models that people are using, particularly jurisdictions that are not a county, since we don't have the flow that the county does.
I mean, I can start that, and Maddie or Lisa, you can jump in. I think for the struggle you have with homeless funding is there's never one source of funding, and for any of the model that you're going to choose, it's always piecemeal, both funding for an operating and then development and services as well too. So you have 3 legs of the stool. I think the struggle, even more so for some of the models that Maddie and I talked about, is outside some state, and there's certainly no federal funding, and there can be some state funding and possibly ESG, which is a federal funding source. But you really have to know the funding sources, know what the use restrictions are. A lot of the examples that we gave are either privately funded or through city general funds that came with flexibility to be able to try. I think if you are going to, and part of the reason we said to pick one model certainly is the best practices that you're going to learn from doing the model, but you can also develop and spend time trying to develop a funding stream for one or two types of models that tries to pick from all of the different trees that may be eligible for the best possible ways. That gets harder and harder the more different types of models that you choose, and you're either leaning more on Sacramento general funds or on private volunteer and funding, which really limits the scale that you can do. So, I mean, we certainly can go into more depth with your office on each of these models for what's eligible and what's not, and what we've seen in other communities, if that would be helpful individually with you.
Yeah, I think not with my office, but if you're working with the city, with our folks who run this, I think that would be helpful. And if there's things that we can learn from you or opportunities that we may not be taking advantage of, I think that would be really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Who was next, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Harris, Laloi, and then Guerra.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, this is obviously a complex problem that we've been working on all the years I've been on council. There are several components: siting, choosing a program, finding the funding, and meeting the needs of very different populations, subsets of the homeless community, because clearly this is not one size fits all. The closest you can get to that is the large shelter model or campus model of Haven for Hope, which is something that I have come to support, and Katie and I have talked about the Boys Ranch as a possible siting. Of course, that forces us to collaborate with the county, which is a very good thing. And also Bridget Dean is supportive of that site and that particular model. But if we are successful in doing a larger program like that, that would be fantastic. But as I said, one size doesn't fit all. There are a number of complex decisions that we need to face, I think, as a council, which is we have limited funds. So how do we get the best bang for the buck? How do we get the best outcomes for the most number of people, the highest number of people? Should we pick and choose various segments of the population to work very hard on and focus on getting good outcomes quickly with some of those? For instance, some people are situationally homeless whose problems can be dealt with rather swiftly. In essence, it's kind of like the prevention model for people who are just recently on the street. And we can deal with that quickly. We could focus on women, children, and families on the street, which is a very vulnerable population that I'm particularly concerned about, because any child who's raised on the street is going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road to create a fully functional life. It's really tough for kids that way. We have many of the pieces in place, like for tiny homes, we have First Step communities. We have great providers like Volunteers of America, who ran the Mather Community Campus for years. We've done this in bits and pieces. What we haven't done is had a coherent discussion about focus. Where are we going to put our money, and what are the outcomes we want to achieve? The good news now is that we have staff who are capable of that conversation. Frankly, between Michelle and Bridget Dean and Danielle Foster, we've got a dynamic team who I feel we should empower to bring suggestions back to the council. We each individually have come up with great suggestions over the years, starting with railroad. Well, I mean, going back 20 years, Quinn Cottages, all the service providers in the River District. This has been approached from many angles for many years. And one of the things that I brought up in all my community meetings is that we have achieved great success. You don't see it on the street right now, but we have housed, as Jay said, thousands of people. We've solved a lot of issues. We know how to do this work. But COVID, quite frankly, sort of obliterated most of our gains, because so many people became homeless so quickly that, the view on the street was even worse. And then you add to that the CDC guidelines and Martin Boise and our inability to move people and clean things up and provide, a volume of shelter spaces. It kind of got a little bit out of control over the last year. That being said, we are getting more state and federal money to affect positive change. I do support a large campus model as one way to move forward. Now, siting then becomes a real big issue. If we look at, we're going to have some funds. We've got good providers. I still think two pieces are missing: the cohesive conversation about the measurable outcomes, which populations we want to focus on and place. And Mr. Mayor, you've challenged us to come up with sites in our districts, and I want to tell you that Cal Expo is a very opportunity-rich site, but we don't own it. The state does. And I challenge you, Mr. Mayor, to work with me or work for me and go to Governor Newsom and say, look, we are in a crisis. This is a place where many models could be affected. We could do safe parking there. We're already doing 60 camp trailers there. We could do an interim housing model, and possibly we could do a large campus model there, or a model that could work in conjunction with the Boys Ranch. And that's where staff comes in. They could put together a plan, I think, that would pull all of these pieces together. I know that wherever I have said there was a reasonable site, I've gotten tremendous pushback. It took me 2 years to find the railroad site. And every time I propose one, and Jay knows this pain as well, when you go to the community, people react in fear immediately. And anger is the second emotion they feel, because they're fearful of impacts to their communities. But Cal Expo is 400 acres. We only need 20 acres of 400 to affect a lot of positive solutions there. I hope, Mr. Mayor, that we can work together and put that site in play, because I really believe that and combined with Aries housing, we could put together a really good model. But again, I would want to lean on staff for recommendations about how to arrange it over time. And the last thing I want to say about this, I know that the business community has reacted very unfavorably to putting Cal Expo in play. At one point, we authorized the triage center on Ethan Way, had to deal with DGS, but the pushback was so great that we couldn't quite get to the finish line, so we transferred that to Meadowview, which was also a stressful thing to do. But, I really believe this. Having seen how operators can manage various sites and various models, that we could even use part of Cal Expo and enable the state fair to go forward. And I could see a collaborative approach where there could be an interconnect between the two. Maybe even, this might be a dream, but taking a little surcharge from state fair admittance fees to help support a big community effort like this. There are ways to get creative. We do have a few spots available, but frankly, it takes land. It does. It takes acres to deal with this problem. Tiny sites all over the city are not really a model that I favor. I think it would create stress in many places in the city. I hope that we can get there. I hope that we can work with staff, create interim possibilities at Cal Expo, and finally get to a campus model. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Guerra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate all the panelists and conversation here. Last night, we just had our District 6 community meeting on siting, location, and how to address this issue. And we've had a working group that's been pulling together all of this so that we have a community-based focus on that. I want to thank Sacramento Steps Forward and because we've had some of their staff who live in District 6 participate. Also providers that are in District 6, like St. John's, Sacramento Self-Help Housing, Mercy Housing, and Mutual Housing. And also we have on the working group, unhoused neighbors and our advocates that are working with our own neighbors who are working with the unhoused neighbors. And one of the things that came up pretty collectively from different points of view, but pretty collectively, was how difficult the current situation is for someone who is experiencing homelessness to be able to maneuver through the current system. They've got to get on multiple wait lists, even for an apartment or a service area, and hope that they can catch or get a call back or catch that opportunity. So the number of entry points to the system, I think the number was something like 61 different entry points. And so the challenge really is for anyone who is trying to do this on their own, who is experiencing homelessness, is difficult. So this concept of co-locating services is clearly one that is appealing, because the current system is making it difficult for anyone to, even for others people, to help folks through that. So I appreciate that conversation moving forward. And so maybe this is a question for Lisa here, because one of the things also that came about this from folks who are working already in District 6 and providing permanent supportive services and out there is, how do we not complicate the current web that's already there? Even if we do a campus model or a bigger situation, what are the conversations that you've all had to make sure that we don't overcomplicate the current system? And this could be for any of the panelists. Or I'll pick somebody, I guess. Lisa, I think, or you're on mute.
Am I unmuted now?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's been a lot of work that has been done in the last year with the continuum of care to really look at the system and how it's performing, and actually mapping the system of care. We are also working with the committee to look at the gaps in our system and are close to having a gaps analysis. So I think those two pieces of work that have been going on for several months with our COC would be informative to your conversations about, where are places that we might want to go forward. And I think there's time in your schedule sometime in March that maybe some of that information would come forth. As was mentioned on several of the conversations, there's no one solution here, so I don't think that there should be any ruling out at this point. But the ability to understand, how the system is functioning now, where it could be improved, what are the gaps that we are seeing, and the bottlenecks, quite frankly, in the system, I think will help in determining where you best want to put your investments. And that conversation with the county, I would just offer, is so critical and crucial, so that we do have a collective and collaborative approach going forward. There's many different models of where that collaboration is existing, and some of you pointed that out already, but there's many more places where we are collaborating pretty extensively with the county, and lots of lessons learned, the COVID response being one of them. Several of the permanent supportive housing projects that have been funded and are about to begin really also work with the county in terms of offering services. So I think there's a lot more that we can be sharing with you all to help inform, collectively, to inform, what your master plan shapes up to be by June.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I think that's an important point, this gap analysis and understanding the bottleneck, because what we would not want is each district coming up with its plan and siting plan, and becomes, while maybe voted on as a citywide plan, complicating the problem because it doesn't address those gaps in the current system. So for one, I'd like to make sure that that gap analysis is discussed as we move forward, and how all of those pieces interconnect. and then helping us identify those bottlenecks, because we might be able to have certain resources in each district that can meet those needs of those bottlenecks. The last piece that I'll bring up here is maybe there's a question for Dr. Lubarsky, because on the campus model you mentioned even starting off with like purchasing a hotel that's out there or securing one. And I know for one, I've reached out to Supervisor Cerna and Supervisor Kennedy who've agreed to say, hey, as we're working on warming centers and finding an urgency now to get people out of the elements, let's work together. And they've agreed to work together to help them as if we can find a location and get them signed up for medical services. But one of the places we were looking at is, I'm thinking about is places like hotels or apartments that are up for sale or other facilities. I mean, can you, Dr. Lubarsky, can you talk about your thought or the thinking about what kind of places other than, I mean, if we get Boys Ranch, great, but if that's not a possibility, then what other possibility of locations have you looked at?
Right. Well, so originally, now many months ago, when Project Room Key came out, we did look at trying to get an accumulation of hotels and motels in a downtown area, because again, a very low barrier to entry for people to simply walk to a better place. And the idea was not ideal, but again, enemy of good is perfect, right? Is could we come up with mobile vans that would become basically on-site clinics and medical and service places. And again, psychiatric care just requires a nice room. Okay, it doesn't really require a ton of stuff in addition to, say, a mobile van with a clinic exam room. And so could you do that? Yes. Medication-assisted treatment's a little bit more difficult because it often involves a fair amount of medication administration. So we need to figure out how and how we would actually deal with that in that concept. We sort of need an ancillary building for that. And that's what the Tucson campus. There's a campus in Tucson that actually took a converted convention center hotel and then added a warehouse next to it and converted it into a working kind of mini campus. So again, we don't have to serve everyone. We just have to serve someone, right? Well. And we can serve 50 people well on the way to serving 400 or 500 at a time, then that's fine too, right? Because that's 50 more people. And they surprisingly, again, there's plenty of mobile vans out there with FQHCs. Many of them already have mobile vans with outfitted medically to serve the homeless population. Elica being one that I've talked to them previously, and again, why it would just be so much more efficient if the van was parked right in front of a hotel with 200 homeless individuals who could be provided intensive outpatient therapy on a regular basis. I'm not saying Elica should do that. I'm just saying a van could do it.
Thank you. We got a long agenda. I want to make sure we're wrapping this up here. Okay. Councilman Guerra?
Yeah, so I'll just close with, that's a good point. I'll just ask that the staff follow up also with Pride Industries, because they've actually produced a model to try to address the issue of the lack of a location and trying to figure out a campus model where we don't have to build something out. And if we can't have space to be able to do that. So I'd like to bring that forward, Mr. Mayor, to figure out maybe there's a way to use some of our vacant land, and it's a hybrid model. Great if we can't get if we can get Boys Ranch and move that forward, that's good. But in the absence of that, I think we should be looking at other opportunities as well. So thank you to the presenters, and appreciate that.
Very good, thank you. Council Member Laloe, and then Mayor Pro Tem Ashby.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you very much, the panel. It was definitely very informative. I do have just a few questions. It seems like the common topic that I'm hearing is that it has to be a city-county joint effort to move forward on this topic. So I wanted to make sure I'm clear on that. And then also with some of the models that was brought up by Mr. Patrick from Home Base. It seems like some of those models, we're actually doing that right now in our city. However, I also heard from Dr. Lubersky that we have a revolving door. And is there any solution on that revolving door? And also have the numbers between city, unsheltered, reconciled with the county and state, so we have a better data on which direction we're headed. Another thing that I wanted to ask is, we've heard about shelters and different ways to go about it, yet do we need to also discuss and have the funding available for a mental health facility and substance abuse facility? And those are my questions and comments. Thank you.
I mean, some of those questions may get answered next week when we have our city team back to talk about implementation. And some of this is centered, mental health, of course, is centered on the county because they're the recipient of the mental health resources. Can we park that one and make sure that we answer it thoroughly next week?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Ashby, then Councilmember Bang.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a couple of areas of topic I want to do here, and I want to start with you, Mayor, because at first, when I first heard the presentation, I thought, this is really, like Councilmember Valenzuela said, looking at the 5-point plan and adding a few other things. But you, Mayor, I know what you're trying to do here, and I want to try to focus on that. We're talking about these different programs and projects, and the 5-point plan, I think, is a great starting ground. It's not the finished product, obviously, and a campus model is not on there. So, for example, that would be one thing that we heard Dr. Lubersky and Chet Hewitt talk about, some type of Haven for Hope type model. But I know, Mayor, what I hear you saying is that you want to get from these meetings some capacity goals.
Yes.
And some citing priority language or direction, and some prioritization around particular areas. So I'm focusing my comments on those 3 things and sort of setting aside my feelings and thoughts on the rest of what we heard today around the items. Is that fair, Mayor? Is that fair?
Whatever you want. You have the
All right.
floor.
First of all, I just want to say that I really appreciate Councilmember Harris and his comments about empowering staff, and particularly Lachelle, Bridget, and Danielle. And I heard Councilmember Valenzuela echo those same comments. And I want to join that chorus and say, I know we're bringing them back next week, as you've already stated, Mayor. But I think we have a strong team leading us, people that we've chosen. And I think we're in a good position with them. Here's what I would like to see, one council member. And I think that, there is a style of addressing homelessness that, is called a functional zero model that, some of you've probably heard of and maybe others have not. But what that basically means is that you take one population at a time and you try to get them to a zeroed out number, meaning doesn't mean there's nobody homeless in that category. It means that the number of referrals that you do in a month doesn't outweigh the need. So you don't have people left over. You have enough places for how many people in an average month you would see in that category. A lot of cities have done this with veterans, which I think is great. But for me, I'd like to see us focus on this type of model. And I know Bridget Dean and Lachelle Dozier both agree with me on this. I would like to focus on a functional zero model that prioritizes first women and children and families, because I think, and I know Bridget and Lachelle both think, that in a relatively short period of time, we could get to a functional zero on that population. I know I've heard Councilmember Harris also talk about this population as a high priority, and Councilmember Valenzuela and Vang. So perhaps if we can get some agreement there, Mayor, it might help us with the question that you have around prioritization. And perhaps if we start to look at a functional zero model, which I know Bridget Dean is an expert on, maybe she'll talk to us about it next week, that perhaps we could move quickly on that capacity goal and that prioritization, which might also inform siting, because women and children can't be in a campus setting, and they are not, that is not a good model for housing first. Women, children, families, they have to be, as Councilmember Valenzuela told you, independent. So when we had a family walk in with a 9-month pregnant mom and a 1-year-old and a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old, with Bridget's help, Councilmember Valenzuela and I had them out of there in less than 30 minutes. Literally, I went to my car to get them coloring books. By the time I got back, they were gone. It's like, Katie, where did they go? She said that Bridget already came for them. That's what we need in this city. I want that every time. And I know Bridget wants that. And I know that Lachelle wants that. And I think, Mayor, that it is attainable with the resources that you have brought and with the dialogue that you are directing here. I think if we make that our #1 priority and we talk about how we're going to do that, doesn't mean you do it to the exclusion of everything else, but in setting your priorities, getting to a functional zero in that population, to me, I believe is attainable. And I think that that approach could work also well for veterans and transition age youth, which might be quickly set to follow. I do think that what we heard from some of these partners who were willing to help with us is great. And the longer they stick with us, the better off we'll be to have UC Davis and Sierra Health and the other groups helping us address these needs. I want to do just 2 last things here, Mayor. One, I would like to make a comment on the warming center. And then lastly, I'd like to ask Lachelle Dozier a question. So on the warming center, I'll be as quick as I can. I want to be really concise with my words here, because everyone involved in the warming center is a hero. And I mean like absolute hero. Mayor, you for fighting to get it open. Howard for fighting to get it open. This council for voting to open it and keep it open this long. Every one of you is heroic in your efforts. Rivka at the library for taking this on and having it in her space and being there. Daniel Bowers and his team with Chris Conlon and the Office of Emergency Services. They've been incredible. Even the county in providing us a social worker. To my knowledge, they've only missed 1 night of having a social worker. They did supplies early on. We haven't seen supplies in a while, but maybe that will come back around. Rich Desmond has been a wonderful partner. Lachelle Dozier has been a wonderful partner. Everybody involved in this, the mayor's staff, my staff, Councilmember Valenzuela's staff, have all worked the facility. We've all been there several nights. I hope it's really clear that I think all of those people are doing a great job. And I also believe that the volunteers and the advocates on site are some of the kindest, most generous people in the city of Sacramento. They are literally working all day and then coming down to help us with a homeless warming center at night. They are incredible human beings. All of that said, we are not the right people to run a shelter. A warming center for a few days, sure. A shelter, no. As heroic and tremendous and wonderful as everyone involved is, if the city wants to run a shelter, we must contract it out to people who are service providers. We have had the warming center open long enough to know it's not sustainable for us. Councilmember Valenzuela and I have literally cleared out every target in the city with the resources that we need at that facility, as has Rivka, as has the amazing security guards on site. I mean, literally, we've given it everything we have, and I am so proud of everyone involved. But we need professional service providers. And I am going to share one story with you so that you all know exactly what I'm talking about. There is a woman named Sharon who comes to the facility that Councilmember Valenzuela and I are both very fond of. I'm going to tell you something horrific, okay? When a person is raped repeatedly, they lose control of their bladder and their bowel system. I learned this when I had to buy dozens of beds for St. John and City of Refuge. Okay, there are people in that situation in this shelter who need our help. And Councilmember Valenzuela and I have stepped into spaces where a professional would have been able to do more. And I'm telling you this story because I want you to know that when I left the facility day before yesterday, I cried on my way home that Sharon was stuck with me, that I was the best we had for her. I felt so sorry for her. I wished I had brought my husband, who's a nurse. Okay, so I want Steve Waters or VOA or City of Refuge or somebody else to be in that space to help these people that have deep needs. I put a literal Band-Aid on a wound that really requires something so much more. By the way, Councilmember Valenzuela and I had to go raid first aid kits in City Hall to even find Band-Aids. I just cannot reiterate to you enough. I'm very proud to be a part of that. And Mayor, you were so right on to get it open and try to help people. But the next step for us is to find the right people to run this shelter as soon as we possibly can. Okay, I just can't be clear enough on that. And then lastly, and this is just a totally different topic, I just want to ask Lachelle Dozier to give us her feedback on Haven for Hope or the campus model, and tell us if you think that some of the things that we've talked about here would be a good direction to go. And I know you're going to talk more next week, so maybe just briefly. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, I have had an opportunity to tour Haven for Hope several years ago. My staff have gone back even since that time, and it truly is a very transformational campus. It is 22 acres. That was all owned by the city. And now the Haven for Hope came in, but it started because there was a very generous benefactor, a millionaire who really wanted to do something. And really he started the seed money and continues to fund it through his foundation. It cost about $100 million to actually stand up the campus. And the ongoing operational costs are about $20 million per year. But it really does provide a kind of a graduation for people to move through the campus. So there may be things that we in Sacramento can use and really customize it more towards what we can do and what our needs are, which might be very different from San Antonio. It can be sized, there's no doubt about it, but it is an expensive model. That is true. You know, the consultants really talked to us from home base about it. So it is quite an investment.
Well, that sounds like an endorsement of the concept to me, from our most important lead in the city on these issues. And we're going to dive into this in greater detail because today just scratched the surface, which is, you know, concept. It's a good idea, but now we got to focus on sites, and we're going to work with the county. And we've got to be aggressive about it, just as we've been aggressive about every other piece of this. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Vang.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll keep this short because I know most of my colleagues have spoken. I just wanted first just to thank everyone who presented and just doing kind of like a one-on-one education presentation of what can be done and what we are currently doing. So I really appreciate that. I also wanted to share that District 8 did hold our community meeting regarding the citywide plan. So just want to give a shout out to all of the residents and advocates who showed up for that. I think what I've definitely heard from the community meeting is that the city can't do this alone, and it needs to be a regional and long-term approach. And so just wanted to make sure that, you know, we still keep that center in focus. I think Councilmember Harris and a few of my colleagues mentioned that we can't do this alone. And so that partnership is going to be critical. I was going to ask a question around asset mapping, because what I heard from communities is that they wanted me to share with them, what are we already doing in the city of Sacramento, in a particular District 8, which I know we have the Navigation Center. We have a project that's coming with SHRA with Project Home Key, where we're changing a motel into permanent housing. And so an asset analysis and a gap analysis is absolutely important as we continue moving forward with a conversation. I think I did have one question, Lisa, and maybe you can answer this, is I want to know, do we have an kind of like a integrated record system to track our unhoused neighbors when they touch the system and if they're utilizing services? Is that something that we have already?
The most comprehensive thing that we have is the Homeless Management Information System. So we have about 60 different providers that enter information about their services for folks that they are interacting with who are experiencing homelessness. But it is not a complete picture. And so one of the things that our gaps analysis will reveal is that we need to have more integration with the behavioral health system, with the criminal justice system. So we have a slice and a good slice and understanding, but we do not capture everyone who is experiencing homelessness in that system. And as I pointed out earlier, we do lose contact with quite a few individuals as well. And that has to do with just the capacity to be able to keep in contact and keep services and connections. So.
Yeah, no, Lisa, I'm asking that question because I'm also thinking about the data piece. Like if we are to move forward, it's so important that we have the data capacity to be able to do this work. I think for me, what is one thing that's really just outstanding for me, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to dive into this next week, but really as a citywide master plan, as a council, what is our benchmark? Like what are we trying to accomplish here? Is it to build our trauma-informed service capacity? Is it to maybe it's all of that, right? But I don't know exactly what our outcomes and benchmarks are. Is it to eliminate homelessness in all of Sacramento, right? And what are the strategies for that, right? So I really appreciate this conversation, I think, but for me, it's just, we don't have any benchmarks right now. And I'm really looking forward to that gap analysis, Lisa, because I think for us to be able to move forward, we're gonna need that information. And I don't wanna have a citywide plan, here are all things we're gonna do, but we need to have some benchmark and some goals that we wanna meet once we vote on this up and down in June. Like in 6 months, where do we wanna be in terms of our number? In 1 year, where do we wanna be, right? And what does that look like in terms of capacity building? And so those are the things that I want to see in our citywide plan. What I've heard from communities from our first meeting is, Councilmember Vang, you represent us. We want to see the data. We want to know what's happening, what's the gap analysis. And so I'm going to need that information. The public needs that information. And so moving forward, I really look forward to our conversation next week. And I'm hoping that we can dive more into this. But I think that data piece and making sure everything is integrated is absolutely critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vang. Last comment real quick. First of all, on Mayor Pro Tem's comment about the warming centers, I want to add on my thank yous. Incredible, heroic work. And I agree with what you said, Mayor Pro Tem Ashby. We're going to bring a different question to the City Council in several weeks, and that is whether or not we should open these kinds of respite centers year-round. I think that we should, but in order to do that in the right way, the way we have started over these 2 weeks is absolutely not sustainable. Despite the heroic work, and Councilmember Valenzuela deserves a lot of thanks and credit for really organizing. But in my view, in order to do this long-term, year-round, I agree with Ms. Ashby, and we're going to have to work with the experts, the nonprofit experts, and we got plenty of them, and more news and announcements to come there. I want to end though on the broader question, because I think it's important for me to reiterate what today was about, because there's maybe a little bit of confusion and maybe a little bit, well, God, didn't we already discuss this stuff? Last week we had our staff present, next week we're going to have our staff present. For example, Bridget Dean, who we lavished rightful praise on last week and continue to. She is stretched so thin working on developing an outreach plan. That isn't what this was today. You remember when it comes to, when we talked about a master plan and you approved it unanimously, we are working towards the development of a master siting and operations plan. Have to re-argue every site over the next year, 2, 3 years. And so today was a foundation for the development of a master siting plan. So there's method to the madness here. Everything is going to come together as we proceed. And please have a little bit of faith in the process, because this wasn't negating anybody else or anything relating to the other essential components of this work, outreach and case management being number one, but this is citing. And I think it was a very good hearing and appreciate the time and attention from the members, the staff, the team, everyone who spoke, and of course, the public. Let's move on now to item 16, which is another exciting opportunity, and that is to dive into the subject of a participatory budgeting pilot project. We have with us today Deborah Otto Kent, who is a member of the Measure U Advisory Committee and who has been the lead both within the committee, excuse me, and in the community, helping develop this idea of participatory budgeting. I believe she is joined by Kathy Cresswell, who is also a member of the Measure U committee, and the leader in our housing advocacy space, Christina De Leon. Welcome to you as well. I'm going to turn it over to Deborah Otto Kent to begin the presentation. I see Dr. Dana Kivel as well, another member of the Measure U committee. Welcome to you. I may be missing people. You'll excuse me. We'll make sure you all get introduced appropriately. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Steinberg, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to talk more with you about participatory budgeting. Our committee and our Measure U committee and ad hoc committee have been before you on a couple of occasions, and we're really happy to dig into some of the details and questions that have been raised over the past number of months from you to help further explain and define what is participatory budgeting. But first, in addition to Dana Kivel, Kathy Cresswell, we also have a member of our committee, Kim Williams. She's also the vice chair of the Measure U committee with us, as well as Flo Jean Kofer, who, as you know, chairs the Measure U advisory committee. Christina De Leon is the director of partnerships and strategy with the participatory budgeting project, and she is based in their Oakland office. As well as Felicia Flores, who is an administrative analysis with the city manager's office from the city of Vallejo. That's the crew here that will be doing the presentation today. So just, you know, a little bit of history. I mentioned the Measure U committee has sent 2 letters to City Council requesting budget allocations to fund participatory budgeting and bring participatory budgeting to Sacramento. We have presented at the September meeting and again at the December 1st Budget and Audit Committee. And during those meetings, it was agreed that a workshop would be helpful. So during those times, those meetings, and in other conversations that we've had with many of you, we learned that there are questions about participatory budgeting around its process, how it works, what impact it has had on other cities. You've asked for examples from other cities. I'm excited that Vallejo is here in the house with us, and Sat City was lifted up a number of times by a few of you. Questions about how participatory budgeting augments existing efforts for resident community engagement conducted by council members, by the city and others. You've asked about what kind of funding recommendations residents generally make, the amount of their allocations, and the outcomes of those funding decisions. You've also asked about how to ensure robust community engagement. I think Councilmember Guerra raised a question about how do we ensure that engagement is culturally and linguistically relevant. And overall, you've asked how can participatory budgeting contribute to making our great city better? So I want to, reference the staff report that was done, as well as the draft implementation plan. This was a request early on that we put pen to paper to try to describe what would be the process of implementing participatory budgeting in Sacramento, and that's reflected in the draft work plan in your packet. So our second slide here, we'll kind of go over our approach for the workshop. Kristanian is going to run through some slides to try to address many of the questions that I just outlaid. We'll see a very quick 4-minute video from hearing from elected officials from throughout the country who have implemented participatory budgeting. We'll talk a little bit about the Vallejo experience, hear some reflections from our Measure U Advisory Committee members who are here with us, and then have a lot of time for questions and answers. Before we do that, I really want to start with a thank you and a couple of asks. So first, I want to thank you for your vote and support during your meeting on Tuesday, approving the inclusion of $1 million for participatory budgeting in next year's budget. We believe that this is a commitment towards racial and economic equity, a commitment to expand resident engagement, particularly those from underserved neighborhoods. We believe that many people feel frustrated, disengaged, and disconnected to decisions in their community, and that PB, participatory budgeting, is a way to build trust, belonging, and essentially civic muscle of residents, because I think what I've learned is that participatory budgeting really is an education tool as well, and educates residents about how city budgets work and how decisions are made. Participatory budgeting very early aligned with the Measure U committee's priorities, values, and interests to increase investment and engagement in historically underserved neighborhoods in our city. We felt it very much aligned with the promise, if you will, of the Measure U tax when it was enacted. And we recognize that this is an initial pilot of $1 million, and our committee has asked for a greater investment. And we have confidence that the initial impact that we show through the pilot will be reflected in an increased allocation of funding towards this process. In terms of an ask, we are asking for $225,000 now to begin implementation of participatory budgeting in our city. This will include engaging an outside implementation partner who will work closely with city staff to do the formative work to ensure the PB process implementation and rollout is successful in our city. We are asking that you please direct the city manager to proceed with funding support for participatory budgeting to start the implementation process now. Second, we are requesting that you enact whatever changes are needed legally or otherwise to ensure that the resident recommendations that come out of a very robust participatory budgeting process cannot be changed after they are made, and that they are binding. We also believe that we're really confident that some of the concerns related to this term binding will be addressed during the presentation and what we're going to hear from Kristania. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kristania.
Thanks so much, Debbie. Thank you everyone for having me. Lovely to be here. So my name is Kristania De Leon. I am with the Participatory Budgeting Project, or PBP. I want to just start by introducing a bit about us, what we do, and why. We were founded in 2009 to support the first ever PB process in the United States, which took place in Chicago, and have supported, grown, inspired, been a part of almost every PB process in North America since. Our work is entirely focused on supporting community members in having decision-making ability, working together to directly decide how to spend parts of our public budgets. And we have staff in New York, we have an Oakland office, and then now during COVID have our team kind of scattered all over Minneapolis, Ohio, Boston, everywhere in between. Debbie mentioned that we wanted to share a video with you all, so I'm going to pivot us over. I'm going to hope that tech will be cooperative and play a video that features elected officials, speaks to some of their perspectives on participatory budgeting, the benefits, the challenges, some of the angle and potential there. I'm going to push play. I'm going to wait for like a thumbs up or some kind of indication that the audio is working. And then I'll expand to full screen. So if someone can be prepared, just let me know if they can hear it. That would be great. It's only about 4 minutes.
Audio's good.
Thank you.
Participatory budgeting is basically where constituents get to weigh in on how we spend their tax dollars.
Taking a piece of the city budget and saying to your constituents, you guys get to decide how to spend this part of the money. In many ways, it's like the most direct form of participatory democracy.
Participatory budgeting allows the folks in a community to be more involved in deciding how a city spends part of their budget by actually coming up with ideas for projects that they think will benefit their community, working together to build those ideas into proposals, and then having a big community-wide process where everyone votes on what ideas get implemented. I first heard about participatory budgeting from community activists, and then 4 years later, here we are implementing it in Durham.
We brought participatory budgeting to New York City 8 years ago now, and the last couple of years in New York City, over 100,000 people have voted in PB.
It's been 4 years and we've now gone through the process 3 times, and I think that the experiences that we have with participatory budgeting in St. Louis show that it can really work anywhere. I've used the data that we've gotten from participatory budgeting to guide other funding. So for me, it's a great educational tool to make sure that I really am in touch with the needs of our community.
Not to be crass about it, but it is really good, you know, if you want to do something that your constituents not just like, but also builds their sense that I'm glad I voted for that person because I feel more able to affect change together with my neighbors. That's not an easy thing to do. PB really delivers that.
Some of the biggest challenges with participatory budgeting is staff capacity and time. The other challenge is money. And so having to overcome some of those barriers in order to just inform people of the process is something that we're still trying to work our way through.
It is a lot of work. I don't want to pretend like it's not. If you already filled up your docket, that is hard. You have to plan to be able to make it a percentage of your staff time and your budget and your own personal time.
So I would say it is a lot of work, but it's not a lot of work for me because we've hired an incredible staff to do our implementation.
The thing about it is, the point of participatory budgeting is really to delegate. It really should not be an elected official-led process. It should be an elected official-supported process.
Cities are a place where we can build a more equitable and inclusive and responsive democracy, where everyone really has a voice at the table and is able to make their voice heard and advocate for their needs and their community's needs. Participatory budgeting is a great way to put those ideals into action.
It has really increased engagement in our community. And a lot of folks have said, well, you know, we see that our tax money is actually working for us at a local level. It gives us more faith in the system. And so now we come out and we feel a part of the decisions that are being made that impact us every day.
What we've seen in Durham is people getting more and more involved in local politics. And so giving people an exciting and really meaningful way to be involved in a community through participatory budgeting feels even more important right now, because I think people really need a way to continue to be engaged civically in ways that feel hopeful and empowering to them. And our hope is that if people come out and vote in PB, that is the first step on a long road to lifetime political engagement.
Okay, so can folks see my screen now? I hope so. I hope it's transitioned okay. So that's a video. The resources there. You can see it on our Vimeo. But I think really speaks to some of the experiences that other electeds have had with participatory budgeting, why they do it, challenges they plan for and around, what that's looked like in other spaces. I want to talk a little bit about participatory budgeting as a practice that is one of many ways to engage community members in decision making around our budgeting. And primarily, use this tool and resource. Some who've seen us speak about this before may already be familiar, but really thinking about the context of participatory budgeting within a framework of other ways that identify community functions in decision making that impacts budgets. So when we think about, the ladder and as we kind of move up it, there are different ways in which community has a voice and can be heard in decision making related to our spending. Hearings and deputations, folks here are no stranger to that space. It is a space for community members also to listen, to see what's happening, to get caught up on various progress and around the things that are happening in their community, and may have opportunities to speak sort of in public comment sections, but it's really bringing community together in a listening function. Come hear what's happening, come see what's going on there. As we move up, the function of community does shift. We have a lot of now games and tools that help folks contextualize our budget, see how if you shift things kind of relate to each other and can kind of adapt, and that is a way to inform folks about how the budgets look, how budgets might kind of play out in action, but doesn't necessarily inform actual decision making in the budget, but it's a great tool of informing community. We are all, I'm sure, also familiar with focus groups, town halls, listening sessions. That is really a great way to say, hey, we have some ideas, we have a trajectory, we have like maybe a multi-year plan already in motion, but it'd be great to hear what folks think about a couple of options that we can present. And that is engaging community member in what is a more consultative manner. We'd like to get your sense on maybe a couple of options or certain things. I will say all of these within the letter are important parts of what create a very robust opportunity for community engagement. But they are a little bit different, and we do recognize that if we're not incredibly intentional and incredibly mindful about how we do this work, the default tends to be access, and sort of nationally, research indicates that participation will skew older, wider, more male if we aren't intentional about the outreach that we do, the equity considerations we bring forward, and really the role of community voice. There are opportunities for participation on citizen boards, councils, and other spaces where there are direct decision-making opportunities. Those are generally spaces where there is great room to kind of involve your voice in decision-making and outcomes directly, but can be very limited for the number of seats relative to the number of community members that are impacted by those decisions. When we think about full participation, broad opportunities for the breadth of our community to come together, to make decisions, lend their expertise, their experience, their voice to our decisions. We look at full participation. Participatory budgeting is one example of that and is quite apart from other kinds of more traditional engagement opportunities. So what is it? We said before, but it is a democratic process in which community members directly decide how to spend part of a public budget. How does it work? I will say that generally participatory budgeting is a framework. It can be adapted to the needs of any particular community to address any particular community challenges. But generally is comprised of 6 key phases or 6 key steps. So first off, after you set aside a portion of your budget that you're going to use and allocate through participatory budgeting, the process starts with convening a steering committee. This phrase can be shifted based on the process. It's sort of a generic term. But it basically is a body that's going to hopefully reflect the demographics of your community and have strong connections to your community members, because this body is charged with serving as the backbone of the process and designing it. They determine the goals, strategies for engagement, criteria for projects, key equity considerations like voting or and participation eligibility. If there are spending regulations, restrictions, focus needs for where the money needs to go, other considerations based on funding, it's always made very clear up front. It's designed with those sort of limitations in mind, or those constraints in mind, and is made clear and at the beginning and throughout the process. Once the rules are set, members of the broader community are then invited to brainstorm ideas for how they think the money should be spent. Again, the funding restrictions are made very clear, and they can do this with a lot of intentional community engagement and a range of strategies and opportunities. You'll see in the video lots of public meetings in person. Now during COVID, that looks very different. It can include texting or other kinds of outreach that can be online. Of course, always being mindful of how we address equity, digital divide, access throughout. They also solicit volunteers who serve as budget delegates. These delegates turn these initial ideas into concrete proposals. Ideas are vetted very rigorously. And part of that is including working with government partners or other critical stakeholders, residents, and other sort of community members who hold expertise to research costs, implementation needs, how it's sustained, where it can go, what's realistic, what's feasible. So they really do consider need, feasibility, equitable impact, and what it really looks like. We don't want anything to move forward in a PB process if it cannot be implemented. So this is where a body like City Council or other partners within the city are engaged in collaboration. We ensure that costs are clear, needs are clear, proposals really meet the goals of the process or the initial funding, and that it really are aligned with the vision of participatory budgeting that are set forth at the beginning, and ensure that everything is clear, costed out, assessed, and vetted. These vetted projects then move forward onto a ballot. The entire community is invited to vote on their top projects in accordance with the rules of the process. It's important to note that when designed for equity, there is no reason why any community members are inherently ineligible to vote. Also important to note that voting can last for days. It can last for even a week. We want to make sure as many community members as possible are able to participate. Sometimes they're even coupled with educational or informational events, so people can hear from their neighbors, hear from each other about their proposals, what's on the ballot, why would I care, and really understand them before they go cast their vote, and build connections and relationships with one another as well. Projects with the most votes get funded until the pot of money runs out. The government agency that maybe is holding the budget then and sort of that budget allocation then releases the funds. So they can be, the winning projects can be implemented by the appropriate institution or agency or department. And finally, the budget process then continues in a cycle. You'll see there's a bit of an arrow that implies that it kind of can begin again. We evaluate it, we refine it, we learn about our efficacy around engagement in meeting our goals, and it becomes a new way of engaging community and budget decision making. It's best if it's not intended to be a one-off and there's some planning and thought about what it means to grow the work. I'll offer some examples of how that's looked in other cities as well. And just a kind of a few considerations, PB as a practice is rooted in making real decisions about real money. It's not intended to be a consultation. We talked a bit about how consultative processes are quite different. This is direct decision making. So the commitment of doing PB means a commitment that what wins the vote is what's funded. And that PB and just decision making like this is really focused on thinking about equitable, accessible, and significant investments that are made with community leadership and strong partnership. And as I mentioned before, it's usually applied to just a part of a budget, not necessarily the whole budget. But we do want it to be an amount of money that corresponds with something that feels significant to folks. It's an in-depth process. It requires folks to volunteer their time, to be engaged, to offer their perspective, offer their expertise, come out and vote, teach each other, connect with each other about these issues. So we need to think about an amount of money that's really worth that effort, really worth folks' time. And really think about if that can be leveraged to actually growing the work overall. Again, we could talk about what that's looked like in other cities and maybe some considerations on that front. The other thing I just also want to offer is that sometimes when folks think about participatory budgeting, it's easy to think about it as something that's extra. We have our budget, but I need something like extra on the side for PB, for community to decide. Instead, we really think about PB as a way to acknowledge that we make decisions about spending all the time. So the question isn't how do we make decisions about our budget and then find like an extra pot where we can do PB with community. The question is where in our existing decision making that we're already making about the same pot of money can we invite more community collaboration, more community leadership, and really learn with our community members and bring their wealth of expertise into the process. It benefits everyone and is a way to kind of think about PB just a little bit differently. It's intended to kind of really think about how do we approach this very differently, but with the same pot of money. We're going to be allocating it regardless. This is a snapshot of some of the information that was offered in the staff report that was kind of accompanying our materials for this meeting. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you see here, some lessons around some context, I think, for some of the allocations, and then some ways that we could think about growth over time, where we've seen that, and just kind of homing on these cities, because I think it's probably a list that folks are going to be using to kind of compare, look towards things, and kind of really kind of assess based on what other citywide processes have looked like. The first city I want to lift up, you'll see Vallejo on here. I'm not going to speak to Vallejo. We have Felicia who can do that excellently. But I do want to start with diving into Boston. You'll see Boston has a $1 million PB process. It's a capital process with capital resources. The city of Boston's full population is over 600,000 people. So you see sort of the amount per resident there. One thing I really want to emphasize and in sort of the context of that is that Boston's process is actually a youth-led process. It's not necessarily intended or really oriented around participation of the full sort of citywide residency population of the city of Boston. It's focused on youth. It's called Youth Lead the Change. It's been going, I think they've finished their 7th cycle, and it's for folks between the ages of 12 and 25 only. And so just a bit of context too around the amount per resident invested. If you really understand the sort of residents who are focused and intended to really be a part of that process in both, like every phase is entirely youth driven, then it's actually quite higher because the focus is really on folks who are only between the ages of 12 and 25. I'll talk a bit more about what they're investing in as well as an example. I want to lift up Merced. You'll see there an allocation for Merced County. Merced's taken a really interesting approach. I'm sure folks here know Merced is a sort of smaller, more rural community in California. You'll see there they started with a countywide allocation to grow PB, and their approach in that space has included actually expanding PB, not necessarily just at the county level, but also bringing it to schools. So there are several school districts that run participatory budgeting within their schools with their students, allocating resources for like within their schools and their school budgets, and has also been further leveraged to think about expanding participatory budgeting at the city level as well, and what that really looks like and is moving forward. So the way that they've expanded and kind of approached this in Merced has also been thinking about the spaces in which they're investing and how that can be leveraged to grow the overall pot of investment overall. Seattle, really, really big example on the top. I want to offer just a few things here. One is that Seattle has had a history of participatory budgeting in the past. They had a really focused transportation process with transportation resources in their Department of Neighborhoods. They also have had a youth-led process as well. This kind of $300 million sort of evolution of PB is actually quite apart from anything the city's ever seen before. So while there was already an understanding of how PB happened and kind of proof of concept of it working in the city, this investment is very significant. And I will say is quite apart from the other kind of precedent that's been set, particularly because, this was momentum and this is a reaction to the movement for talking about racial justice, racial equity in that city. And has required a significant investment on the part of the city to really talk about how they take this really seriously and what Black leadership in particular looks like in influencing and guiding a vision for public safety, a vision for equity across the city as well. And one thing they did very intentionally as building up to the approval of this process was actually receive a $3 million allocation that was offered in the sort of summer prior to this approval process that allowed them to do intentional planning. They did participatory-led research with community members. We're able to pay them for that research and then offer them the physical equipment they need to do virtual engagement, the tablets, the Wi-Fi, the things that they will need to do once they got it approved. And I believe their implementation budget came in at about $1 million. Last thing I'll note is Cambridge. Cambridge was really intentional about how they grew their process. They started at $500,000 and they set goals internally for participation and said if we meet these certain participation thresholds, we will increase the pot of PB by $100,000 a year. So the actual allocation that they're at now is I think at $1 million or just over. They've doubled the investment in their work by being intentional about growing it and having that commitment up front. And as they've grown the pot of money, they've also tripled the participation goals that they set forward since their inaugural year. So that number is now double, so folks can know that. And then other kind of strategies to grow PB, you'll see some in Chicago. Chicago was a place where it started in a couple of wards in the city. Other alder people kind of would observe the progress of PB and say, okay, I think I actually want that in my district as well, my ward as well. I'm really growing like that. Similar in New York City as well. Started with a couple of districts that were committed, maybe $1 million each, expanded to being a $30 million pot, and is now looking at a citywide process with all districts. And the initial recommendation for that investment is looking at $500 million investment for the city of New York. And that should resume once, like after COVID, is kind of more resolved and people can equitably think about how they want to do engagement there.
I want to make sure we're getting to, really want to make sure we're getting to the community discussion and the council discussion. So we can kind of wrap it up as quickly as possible. I'd sure appreciate it.
Sure. What I'll then leave you with then is that there are some reports to talk about investments over time that folks can actually refer to. The links are there. The first looks at a long-term study of New York City, where money is actually moving when we do PB. It's transportation, it's housing, it's youth, it's schools. Again, you can also see what investments are looking like in Boston. It's a youth-led process again. Residents between the ages of 12 and 25, they are investing in urban farms and food deserts. They're investing in supporting those who are unsheltered. They're investing in beautifying, greening, and creating climate supports for their city. As an example of what that's looked like even most presently. Here's a blog that can be a resource for folks that talks about support for this lending itself to increased tax revenue. Folks are more inclined to support and actually buy into, pay into tax increases when they know what works for them, and those who do PB see that outcome. Finally, here are some just reflections on why folks do participatory budgeting, what they see when it comes to community engagement in particular. To hit on just a couple very quick points, we see a lot of movement around broader civic participation. We see folks participate in PB for the first time ever in decision making. Typically between 20 to 25% of participants are ineligible to vote in formal elections. We see participation skewing closer to capturing BIPOC engagement and engagement of folks who make under $50,000 a year. Stronger communities, folks build with each other, they build with their electeds. They learn about how decisions get made and how things get done in their neighborhoods. So they also often report increasing skills with things like public speaking, negotiating, likelihood of reaching out to elected officials, collaborating with them on other kinds of opportunities as well. Again, transparent, equitable decision making. We're seeing sort of strengthening relationships between officials, staff, organizations, residents. Folks are not necessarily fighting on proposals that are already put forward, but are really addressing it, thinking, how do we solve this together? What does that look like? How can we be a part of this process collaboratively? And that's been quite unique to this process. And finally, it improves public spending. You're investing in things that community members help you identify. They're more likely to use the outcomes, what you're investing in. They're more likely to tell their neighbors about them. They're better informed because you're hearing from a wealth of expertise that lives in your community. And again, when we talk about racial equity, we talk about commitments, needs during COVID in particular, it's more important than ever to think about how we commit to practices and approaches that center our most impacted community members. Direct decision making, their leadership and their experiences being centered in this work is allowing for healing, for trust, for more safety with respect to COVID in particular to be honored. And these are what we really see in community spaces as a result. With that, I'll hand it back to Debbie.
Thank you. Great presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Castania. So I mentioned that Felicia Flores is here with us from the city of Vallejo, and several of us had a conversation with Felicia in preparation for this meeting, and I loved what Felicia said about participatory budgeting in Vallejo, as she characterized it as PB is a trust activity, trusting residents to engage in the process, building trusting relationships among people. Thank you, Felicia, for joining us. I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions, and then we can, I know you're going to stick around to entertain questions from other folks as well. So the city of Vallejo has been implementing participatory budgeting for 7 years now. Can you tell us what kind of citizen recommendations have been made for funding of the $1 million budget over the years?
Yes, of course. And just quickly, I'm giving this on behalf of the city of Vallejo, since our city council is in closed session, or else I'm sure our mayor or council member would be here. So I'm kind of their proxy tonight, and happy to share about PB. So thank you for having me. Vallejo's PB funds capital and service and programs. So this looks like pothole repairs, sidewalk repairs, in addition to local park improvements, summer youth internship programs, murals in the community, fire equipment replacement, after school programs, tutoring for youth, firefighter youth academy, dispatch center equipment, low cost spay and neuter programs for animals, senior meals through Meals on Wheels, foster youth employment opportunities, and mentoring, financial literacy courses, cameras for illegal dumping, hygiene kits for unsheltered individual, and improvements to like our senior center, for instance. So definitely a wide range of projects that have been approved. So we've actually contributed over $10 million worth of projects, or $10 million worth of funds towards 64 projects in the time since it's been implemented.
Thank you. And can you tell us, since it's been 7 years, I know you haven't personally been involved continuously over those 7 years, but when we had our conversation, you were speaking to, a little reflection, and I know COVID has given you an opportunity to do a little more reflection just about the process and some lessons learned, and maybe how you're going to adapt, the approach moving forward.
Yeah, so the city of Vallejo is looking at leveraging technology. So specifically, we're looking at launching a public engagement platform that'll help us facilitate the PB process virtually. So from submitting ideas to liking, to commenting, to polling, to surveys, to pin dropping, that type of thing, so that we're able to engage a broader range of citizens. And it also gives us an easier way of establishing two-way communication. So instead of just pushing out information about what projects are going on and when the meetings are, we can also get feedback from folks. So in addition to leveraging technology, we're also looking at how we can streamline the program. So over time, the rule book has gotten longer and longer. We eventually had to add a table of context so people could follow along. So we're looking at how can we simplify the process to remove some of those barriers to participation. So we're taking COVID as an opportunity to be bold and re-envision the program to make it work for our residents and allow for broader participation.
Well, I want to thank you, because I think you're one of the few cities of the many cities who've implemented PB who actually has published your rule book online. So that's been really helpful to our committee. What do you see as the biggest benefits to your city utilizing participatory budgeting as an approach to increase citizen engagement, particularly among those citizens who aren't normally engaged in the process?
Yeah, so I think the biggest benefits, there's really three. One, it's an invitation to engage with the city and that opportunity to build trust, like Deborah mentioned. I think this is also a benefit because some of these programs would not have been funded without PB funds. So if we think about some of the tutoring programs or the low cost spay and neuter programs, so those are not things that were built into the general fund budget, but through PB, we were able to provide that benefit to the community. And last, I think the benefit is the city is better resourced, as well as our implementing partners. So we work with nonprofits and other agencies like our recreation district and like our school district to be able to fund some of their projects and needs so that they're better able to serve our community. So I think those are the three kind of main benefits of the program.
Thank you. And thank you, Felicia. I know you're going to be available for other questions as well. But I want to just summarize, and then I want to call on my colleagues on the Measure U committee to share a little bit of their thoughts as well. So I just want to summarize. I want to thank you for you know, your commitment to make the $1 million investment for participatory budgeting included in next year's budget. Again, just reiterate the request for implementation funds now of $225,000 to begin the process, so that we are ready to, you know, ready to implement before next year's budget is enacted. A commitment, you know, our committee's recommendation is really, participatory budgeting is not participatory budgeting without really noodling through how to ensure that the outcomes and recommendations will be binding, aligned with the participatory budgeting framework. And, you know, finally, I think you're aware that since the Measure U committee has been convening, I think, you know, I've said this several times, that participatory budgeting is the one thing that we all very quickly and early aligned with in support of. And I think that part of that is because all of us, you know, are deeply committed to equity and to engaging folks who aren't part of the process, and to serving residents and underserved communities. And from what we heard earlier from Christania and from Felicia, it is successful in reaching folks and engaging them in the process. So we hope that you will continue to consider our original request of $15 million, which will increase over time after this initial $1 million commitment to implement the pilot project. So with that, I want to call on, is Kim Williams, is she still on the call or in the meeting? I know she had a conflict. So let me call on Dana Kivel.
Yes, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Deborah and Christania, for your very thoughtful and clear presentation. And thank you, Felicia, for your comments and examples. By now, you've heard about PB at the micro and the macro level. It's clear that it works, that it's impactful, and it's doable. As a city that recently passed Councilmember Shanier's important proposal to use public safety funding for community-based programs to diminish violence against young people, a proposal that's the first in the nation, I'm heartened by the council's willingness to be bold, to take risks and engage in work that provides a radical reimagining of business as usual, a reimagining that focuses on inclusion and social, racial, and economic equity measures and initiatives. Another step toward radical reimagining is to invest in deep and broad civic engagement. What is most transformational about PB, and what you've heard today and many times before, is how closely the process aligns with community organizing principles. People closest to an issue should be involved in responding to it. Finally, PB helps us to align our values with our expenditures. The available evidence suggests that well-implemented PB can lead to improvements in citizen engagement, intergenerational understanding, levels of self-confidence among participants, and in perceptions of public service providers. PB helps to make you all look good and make the community feel good about the ways in which our monies have all been spent. At the end of the day, PB is a win-win for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. And can I call on Kathy next? Kathy Cresswell?
Sure. Thank you, and thanks to the council for their continuing consideration and support. And everybody has said everything. I just want to note, though, residents took a leap of faith in voting for Measure U because they recognized there was a need for new and targeted resources for communities that had been too often left behind. And residents showed trust in the city. And this PB process, the participatory budgeting process, can confirm that that trust with the city was merited. And that by creating a process that lifts up voices of the community and that truly represents a process for inclusive economic development and inclusive engagement, the city has a chance to really authentically honor resident voice and choice. So it really is, now is the time, with everything that has happened in this nation and everything that's been happening in our community, now is the time to use this process to build the trust, to strengthen the trust with the community, and to give real voice. And it's not just giving real voice, but the really important part of that is that voice is authentically heard and acted on by the city. That engagement too often is a one-way street. This is really an opportunity to have it be a two-way street where voices from the residents of what they need and how it can be addressed are actually acted on. And this process can do that. So I'm really grateful and continue to encourage you to support this process. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all to the Measure U Advisory Committee. I know you worked very, very hard on this and all of the other issues in sort of the rocky process of implementing Measure U over the last year plus. And so I'm going to save my comments here for a little bit. Let's hear from the members of the public, and then we'll open it up to the City Council. And there is one threshold question, I suppose, before we get to the public, because there was some confusion last week. I consulted with the city attorney, I think who was on the call here, about whether or not we can in fact bind, whether or not we could give binding authority to any residence committee, whether it's Measure U or otherwise, to spend city taxpayer dollars. Madam City Attorney, do you want to sort of deal with that elephant in the room, so to speak, and answer that question, please?
Sure. The question that the mayor posed to me is, can the city legally, is there anything that prevents the city from legally delegating a portion of their budgeting authority? And a second question the mayor posed to me is, can the council by ordinance delegate the budgeting authority? And what I advise is the city charter actually prohibits such delegation, specifically a delegation of the authority to budget. The charter both grants power and a limitation on power. And because the adoption of a budget is a legislative act, the city cannot delegate that. And I can give you the specific charter provisions that speak to that. Sacramento Charter Section 111 sets forth the budget adoption authority of the council. One question that was also discussed is the ability for the city, though, to determine the city council to make a budgeting decision to allocate a certain portion of the city budget to spend on very much, I think, aligned with what the city of Vallejo has done, just because that's a California city, to set aside a portion of the city budget and then determine what the standards are for that budgeting, what that money is to be used, and then have citizen participation. I told the mayor that I think that's probably something that the city could do, and that we could look at it some more. And that was the extent of our discussion today.
So we can't make an ordinance permanently setting aside money for other than the city council to budget, but we could, in the Budget Act, say we want to set aside X amount of money for the community to decide how they best spend.
And what I heard in the presentation today is probably some very specific examples of that. City of Vallejo doing, I think, capital projects and something along that line where the standards are defined. And so the council is not actually delegating, but they are delegating that legislative authority, which you cannot do via because of the charter, but they can actually set aside an amount of money for the public to participate in how it's going to be spent.
So the answer is yes, if it's done right. If it's done with the right kind of standards, is what you're saying.
Yes, and that, again, it aligns well with, I think, exactly what the city of Vallejo is doing and some of the other cities, city of Boston, where from the presentation now was where the council established the parameters and gave it to the public as part of the participatory budgeting process to vote on how that money is going to be spent.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that's helpful. Let's hear from the public. Let's hear from members of the public. How many callers do we have, Madam Clerk?
I have 3 callers.
Okay.
May I have my first caller, please? Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, my name is Daphne Harris in District 8. I wanted to just say I was very happy to see that the City Council brought participatory budgeting to the table. Who better to help determine good services, good programs, good products than the end user? Most successful items usually go to a marketing data analysis, which would be considered what pretty much the budgetary system is doing. I want to make sure that we focus on focal groups. I hear the mayor being very concerned about delegating portions of the budget. You can, I believe, prioritize portions of your budget, just as you did when you got the funds for CARES. You created 4 different compartments to spend those funds. I think the same thing can be done with this particular item. And I believe that that's something that if you want to prioritize it for the city, it's something that can be done, and I think other cities have done. I am looking forward to this process being expanded. I'm looking forward to the community having more say, and I'm looking forward to the end users determining how their dollars are being spent. So thank you very much for the comment.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that I am very supportive of participatory budgeting. That said, I am quite disappointed that the Measure U committee, made up of community members, had a suggestion of $15 million, and Darrell, with his claims of being such a weak mayor, strong-armed the women on the council into having to accept only $1 million by handing out favors to the men on the council. I get that you're a quote-unquote progressive, but actual progressives listen to all interested parties to ensure their needs are being met, and if not, that there is some compromise, not by buying off other members on the board by offering them $5 million that they were asking for. The reality is that we're still in a global pandemic. People are still suffering due to inability to pay rent, high medical bills, loss of jobs, and the resultant homelessness. And when a committee comes along that would be able to address those needs by polling residents to find out exactly what they need, you offer a paltry $1 million. People need solutions now to urgent crises that they are facing now. No one who needs to eat tomorrow will be satisfied by money put into a fund for affordable housing that may or may not be available in a year or more. How does that solve their material conditions now? It doesn't. And I hope you're serious about participatory budgeting when all is said and done, because the reality is that I looked at the People's Budget polling results, and it was pretty clear that while you may have received a majority of the vote for your office, you don't appear to reflect what the people want in your budget, because that's really what it is. If it doesn't reflect the people, it's your budget and yours alone. Its shortfalls are reflective of your lack of leadership. You should listen to the people and allow them to participate in the budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, yes, this is, my name is Lambert Davis. I'm calling on behalf of To the Bay and Back Cheesecakes, and I wanted to make this Measure U Advisory Committee aware of us. Supposedly, you're fighting for companies like ours. We're based in Del Paso Heights. My number is 916-370-9211. Somebody in your organization should be able to write that number down, and then when they call me, I'll give you the website. We're an interesting family-owned business, and it would be to your advantage to contact us. We're very proud of this organization, the Measure U Committee, PBID, organization because a lot of that money should go to Del Paso Heights. You know, some of it goes to District 2, but District 2 is one of the most gerrymandered, segregated districts in Sacramento, much less California. So my focus is on Del Paso Heights, and I hope someone calls. Again, our number is 916-370-9211. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Mayor, I have no more callers.
Okay, let's open it up now to the members of the City Council. I have 3 members up. I think I've got Councilmember Valenzuela, Councilmember Bang, and one other member. So why don't we start with Councilmember Valenzuela? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor, and I want to thank the Measure U committee and their guests for that presentation. It was incredibly thorough. The examples and context, super helpful. Numbers look one way on a chart. It looks another way when you hear the story behind it. And so that was really, really powerful. And I also want to thank you, Mayor, for the clarification exchange you just did with Susanna, the city attorney, because that was the heart of some of the debate last week, right? It was like, can this be binding? Can it be binding if we do it a certain way? And so it's nice to hear that maybe there's a path forward for us to really support the process, which, as we've heard from the presentation, leads to these really well vetted proposals that aren't just, hey, I want to go do this crazy wild thing over here that's never been done before, but stuff that the community really workshops. I do have a point of confusion, a second point of confusion for me from last week, which I think would be important for us to clarify tonight, in addition to giving the city manager and his staff direction to start now, which I think is a very clear reco, like let's start now, let's start in February so that we can get this done. But is how much money is available for the community side of the process? Because we did vote on $1 million for the pilot last week. Is that the total amount of money for both the expenses for the process as well as for the community to spend? Or is that just for the process? And are we looking at maybe in the budget that we're going to adopt in the next couple of months, an additional pot of money that we would need to identify that the community could work with for their recommendations? So and that just might be a clarifying point for me, but I left the meeting last week realizing that I wasn't super clear of 1 million, because when I said 10 million, I meant 10 million for kind of both, like the implementation and the pot of money that the community would have to allocate. But I'm not sure if $1 million would cover that. So
can I, Howard, if you want to answer that, or do you want me to go ahead?
I will. Sorry, I'm starting my video here. Mayor and Council. So what we decided last year at the last meeting on the mid-year was to set aside $1 million to be decided as part of the fiscal year 22 budget process. There was not any additional dollars associated with that $1 million for administrative costs. So whatever the council decides here tonight to get going, let staff know, and we'll take an item back next week to be put on consent, as it's not been agendized for action tonight.
Okay.
So I want to also answer that, man, council member, if that's okay. So I had some preliminary conversations with the Measure U Advisory Committee leadership yesterday on this, and the number that I heard was 150. If it's 200 or 225, we can work that out. My intent would be to support that amount of money separate from the 1 million, additive, so that the money could be used now under, as city manager said, next week we do the consent calendar, whatever that number is. Then the committee can get to work right now on the process, so that next year, early next year, when the process is complete, we will have allocated the 1 million presumably in next year's, in the upcoming budget, and boom, that money can then be spent. So it's, to me, it's additive. I wouldn't cut you from $1 million to 800,000 or 750,000, whatever it is. Let's do this. Let's do this strong. Let's do this.
That is super helpful. Thank you. So
Okay.
like we're doing 1 million and then an additional chunk for the administration, and it's through this year, right? So I think the process would really be done in these next few months, if I understand the timeline right, for the Measure U committee. And it could potentially open up for the next budget, because that's a separate, I'm trying to use my hands to gesture so I can, because it's hard to do this not in person. Potentially, if we wanted to do additional money for like a secondary process or the stuff that didn't get funding, we could do that as part of the upcoming 2021 2022 budget. Okay. And I think, yeah, I just want to reiterate too what some of the commenters said. I mean, people's budget, when we started that, I mean, there's been no funding. It's been all volunteer. It's been completely donated labor and costs and all of the things. And they've had thousands of people fill out that survey from all over the city to influence and say how they want money to be spent. So I think if that's any indication of what's happening in the community, which I think it is, that I hope this is something that all of us would support, because it's clearly something that our communities really, really want to be engaged in, and something like what Councilmember Chenier has done with the youth. You know, I think it's a really good indication of the level of interest. And we started with $6 million for that youth project, right, which is great, and fully support that. And so I wonder, you know, I want to tee up a future conversation for what this looks like in an ongoing way per the Measure U Committee's recommendations. So I am hopeful that we can stay in the loop on this through our budget talks for the 2021-2022 budget, since I think the conversations that are going on and the level of engagement could really help inform those ongoing negotiations. And yeah, I hope staff gets started soon. I'm excited to see what the committee helps us do through this. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so well. Thank you so much. Excuse me. Councilmember Vang.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to the Measure U Committee, Deborah, Kristania, Kathy, Dana, all of you, just for your presentation, and just your, I wanted to say congrats to the committee, right? Really for your steadfast advocacy for pushing for this, because this wouldn't have happened without y'all advocating for this and asking the council over and over again that this is a priority of the Measure U Committee. And so really just want to say congrats to you, even though it's $1 million, it's a win, right? For the community. And, you know, I think your presentation was really thorough, right? At the end of the day, participatory budgeting is really about just building trust with our community and really deepening civic engagement. And I'm really excited that the city of Sacramento is going to be moving forward with this. I did have a few questions. One is wanted to know, just, I know we want to get started on it and hope that we can get the direction to, I think Mayor mentioned the 250 to just jumpstart and let's get going on this. Is how long does the participatory process take from design to decision-making process? And maybe Kristania, you can maybe answer that. I like to kind of just know, right, if we were to hit the ground running tomorrow, ideally from what you've learned from other cities, how long is typically the process from design to decision-making?
Yeah, so typically a PB process aligns with an annual sort of a year-long cycle of a budget cycle. So typically from designing all the way through kind of funding the implemented winners, it typically does take a year. We have seen folks really do it in maybe 9 months. We've seen folks do it in shorter. What adds time is the level of community engagement capacity you have. You can run through the process kind of phases quickly, but the deliberative, inclusive, intentional engagement is really what expands the timeline and really does rely on where you stand with the ability to do some robust engagement and outreach now. And I will just add that in a planning year, so in your very first year in a pilot cycle, it does typically take a bit more intentional planning at the onset. And that should include also bringing on evaluators and other folks to help you kind of learn through the process. In subsequent years then can usually be run much more quickly. But in a primary year, it will take closer to 12 months and sometimes a little bit longer to get ahead of the planning and getting things in place.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think just for me, I think just having a better understanding of just timeline, right? Even within this 1 million, and you know, our new budget for 2021-22 is coming up, and so I'm just thinking about processes, and I do look forward. I think if staff hits the ground running, that Measure U Committee can bring it back to kind of let us kind of show it to us, because I'm a visual person, to kind of see what that process looks like. The other question I have really, and the last one is, you know, ask. Kristania, this goes back to you, to questions to you again, working with city is, what were some of the main difficulties just from jurisdiction as they were implementing PB? And I just want us just to be aware of, are there any challenges that we should foresee so that, you know, as a council, as staff, we are prepared for that? Are there any just kind of difficulties like red flags that we should just be aware of as we move forward?
Sure. So there are challenges depending on what aspect of the work you're speaking to. What I will say is oftentimes when you think about who staffs and supports a process, it's really hard to really staff and like run a successful project sort of in a city if it's something that's just added to existing workloads. No city staff is like, I have tons of extra time to do really robust community engagement, for example, right? So, really thinking about how you might consider staffing something like this is really important. Setting aside a plan to scale it. Folks who start really who tend to start really small, particularly like mid-sized, small cities, sometimes not enough for folks to want to engage. So it can peter out. So you have to think about how are you starting to sustain, grow this, and develop it really intentionally. And that's always really important. COVID does bring its own challenges around engagement. How are we doing equitable engagement? And it does take more planning. I think Felicia spoke to creating a virtual infrastructure that can help facilitate the process. There are things we have to think about a little bit differently. And again, if people are struggling with a digital divide, how are we going to get on that early? How are we going to address it so that he can really be engaged in the process that we're committing to doing as part of PB? I think those are the biggest challenges and just sort of the logistics of running it. And then again, looking at how much access do you have to folks who are trusted community liaisons who can really bring in the voices that you really want to specifically speak to. If we're talking about equitable economic development, who are in those spaces that have experienced disinvestment or haven't really had a lot of investment for a considerable amount of time, who can really bring their voices to the table? How do we get them involved? And that kind of thinking and planning is usually kind of in that make or break section as well.
No, I appreciate that. And Mayor, can I ask for maybe a request, given that I'm on the Budget and Audit Committee, and I'm wondering if this could be a standing item on what the status is, because I want to make sure that we're, that a few council members that we're monitoring just the process as we bring it back to council. Is there any way possible we can have this as a standing item just on updates on how the process is going with Budget and Audit Committee?
I mean, I am happy to make it a regular item. Can we talk about whether or not it has to be on every agenda? Because there may not be new information week to week as we get into the budget season, but we can work out making sure that there are regular reports to the Budget and Audit Committee.
I think that sounds great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work.
Okay, that's excellent. I have Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to tag on to the great work that the committee has done. Flo, Kim, Deborah, all of the committee members who, were just faithful and focused in bringing this participatory budgeting to us. And I just want to thank you for your leadership in doing so. I am confident that it will address some of the racial and economic inequities that we have in our system. I'm also confident that it will touch those who have become disengaged and don't trust the system anymore. But I think this is a starting point for all of us. And I think in the long run, as we see how it works and how it works in Sacramento, then that $1 million will grow, and we'll be able to utilize more of this budget process as we establish our annual budgets and our mid-year budget. So again, my congratulations to each of you. And I thank you for your hard work in making this city better.
Thank you, Councilmember Jennings. I also want to thank the Measure U committee for hanging in there and for making this a key part of your work. This participatory budgeting to me is another part of culture change, an important culture change. And I've said hypothetically, and I know, don't take me literally here, that I believe the entire budget should be based upon community participation. That's what I believe. And yet, what you're offering here is a more organized, a more specific, a more strategic approach to engaging the community and how we adopt our budgets. And I hope $1 million is just a start. I know that you put out there $15 million. And I'm hopeful and actually optimistic that we will get to that kind of number. But this is the first time. And by the way, as you look at the $1 million, you do have the jurisdiction, and Chair Kofer knows this well, you do have the jurisdiction at a minimum over the $50 million of second half Measure U, to be able to organize around and organize the community around and make a specific set of recommendations to the city council. And so I will talk with the leadership of the committee to talk about what the right number is for the for getting going now. If it's 150, 225, 250, whatever, we'll work that out. We'll get it on the consent calendar next week, so we'll get going there. The intent is to put $1 million into next year's budget for the implementation. And again, my hope is that we'll grow that based upon the success of this more intensive way of engaging our community around the theme of this city and its change, which is inclusive economic development, investing in our communities, especially our disadvantaged communities. So good work, thank you. And we'll be seeing a lot of each other, I hope. Thank you.
I guess you don't see my hand raised.
I'm, you know what? In fact, I saw it raised. I was deliberately ignoring you. That was my. Good.
I'm not going to take that bait, although.
Just kidding. I did not see your hand raised. I apologize. Go ahead. You get the last word, Jeff.
Well, you know, this may not be a popular sentiment, but look, we live in a representative democracy. Fundamentally, our jobs as council members is to make decisions for our constituents, and principally that's around the budget. In fact, that's why in our charter, it says that we can't delegate that responsibility. It is our prime responsibility. I understand that there's a lot of discontent in the city and around the country around elected representatives and the decisions that they make. It's pretty pervasive countrywide. I see benefit in participatory budgeting, and I spoke to Debbie Odo-Kent about this, that the primary benefit that I see is that it engages people civically. You know, we don't teach civics in high school anymore. A lot of people are completely disconnected from the process of civic engagement and being a good citizen. You know, if we delegate some money, not delegate because we can't do that, but if we set aside some money to do participatory budgeting, I could see that people would be more engaged in the process. And I see a lot of value in that. I'll tell you what, the only way I would really be in favor of this is that everybody who engages in this participatory budgeting pilot project must read our budget book at the city, because all of their decisions need to be put in context of the real decisions that the council members make to keep this city whole, to provide the basic services that we must do. You know, it's one thing to create a committee to say, okay, I'd like this for my community and I'd like that for that community, but it has to be taken in context of the decisions that we as council members are tasked to make every single week. What we do is manage our budget. So I would like to put that out there, that in this pilot program, everybody who signs up has to read the budget book. And I do have a question for the city manager.
Can I just ask one question, Jeff? How would you enforce that budget reading requirement?
Well, if they sign up, they get the book, and you're going to sit there and watch them read it. That's how I'd enforce it. Manager Chan, so just explain to me, this $1 million, is it coming out of the $31 million that was set aside for the Housing Trust Fund? Or is
it's not been accounted for, and that is the resource that we have after the mid-year. So absent anything else, it will be coming from that 31.5.
Oh, that was my question, whether or not it had been accounted yet. So that's a consideration as well. You know, look, I think overall that this council spends a lot of time making tough decisions about our budget. We had extra money this year at mid-year because we got better tax revenues than we expected, largely coming from real estate. But these things are ephemeral. In the out years, we're looking at red ink. And so for every dollar that gets spent on one thing, a dollar doesn't get spent on another. I'm fine, and the Measure U committee making recommendations to the council are very valued. We'll see how this goes. The will of the council is to engage in this pilot project, and like any pilot project, I would like it to be successful. If it buys more confidence in the council or more trust, as was suggested, that's a good thing. We could use a lot more trust. And again, as far as civic engagement, if people get excited about the process, maybe we'll have a lot more qualified candidates run for office, and they'll have more successful choices in the future of who they choose to represent them. But by and large, this is a representative democracy. We can't run our whole budget in a group decision process with hundreds of people involved, in my opinion. Maybe our society will move in that direction, but the system that we have today is the one that we work under. So I just wanted to make those comments. This will be a very interesting process. Well, one reason that I feel somewhat settled about it is because I know Deborah Odo Kent and I have a lot of confidence in her. So onward and forward.
Thank you, Joe. I just want to clarify because it's come up. The $1 million we're talking about is intended, and it is an article of faith here. It is intended. I'm supporting it. I think there'll be a strong majority on the council supporting it. Comes from next year's budget, the 21-22 budget. That's the idea. Because the process, which we will fund now, if the consent item passes next week, will not be completed until approximately midsummer. And at that point,
can I clarify? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor. I thought there was $1 million in the mid-year budget we voted on last week.
No, there is not. That is not what we voted on. It was a statement of intent. And so, it couldn't be any more public about it. If the fear is that the mayor and the city council are going to ignore the $1 million in next year's budget, I would expect you to hold me and others to account, because we have all said this is exactly what we intend to do. I suppose if there's some dramatic, God forbid, depression between now and June, maybe have a different conversation. I'm supporting the money for participatory budgeting in next year's budget, period, end of story. And I think there'll be a strong majority to do that. But that's what we decided last week. Okay, thank you all.
May I offer some closing comments on behalf of the committee?
Yes, of course, Dr. Kofer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Flojean Kofer. I am serving my third term as chair of the city's Measure U Community Advisory Committee. It's hard to believe that we're at the place where we can say that, especially would not have imagined that in April of 2019 when we first got started. And it's really a pleasure to be with you, to be able to just close up. And I want to start, a little birdie once told me it's important to thank people even when you're not in total agreement. And so I want to start first and foremost by thanking the council for having this workshop this evening. And a special thank you to Councilmember Jennings, who really pushed in September for us to be able to come back and have a longer discussion about what this means. I also want to thank Felicia Flores from Vallejo for sharing some concrete examples. And also, Allison Joe, Councilmember Chenier's chief of staff, who really originally set up the first call about participatory budgeting in spring of 2019, because she saw an opportunity for this to work in Sacramento. I, of course, want to thank my longtime colleagues and partner, Chris De Leon, with the Participatory Budgeting Project, for her expertise and technical assistance. And of course, I want to thank the members of my committee, especially Dana Kivel, Kathy Cresswell, Jesse Ryan, Kim Williams, my vice chair, and Debbie Odo Kent, who is the ad hoc committee chair, because they have put in a lot of time and energy to be able to bring this proposal to you and to continue to champion it over time. As Chris mentioned, we really want to move up the ladder on decision making. And so while, to Councilmember Harris's point, there may be a referendum on elected officials happening nationwide, I want to make it clear that participatory budgeting is not in itself a referendum. This allows us to put money where Sacramentans frequently say they want it to go. It's an opportunity to build goodwill. It increases engagement and a sense of community. And I think that's something that we all really could benefit from as we are entering into the second year of responding to a global pandemic that has severed many of the physical ties that we've had to our community. Participatory budgeting also allows us to repair some of the trust that we have to admit that we lost with the community, especially those who entrusted us with Measure U and may not feel it's been honored in the way that it's been used thus far in the first 2 budgets that were passed. I also want to just highlight, because I think we talked about this a little bit during the presentation, but our initial ask was $5 million per year. And, we saw a comparison of other cities, and $5 million per year would put us on par per capita with a neighboring California city of Vallejo. The city that's a quarter of our size with 120,000 people, but they invested $8.24 per person. If we invested $20 per person, that would put us on par with a smaller city in Washington that only has 7,000 people. But I frequently hear us draw economic and social parallels to cities like Austin, Texas, and Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. And Seattle tops the list of participatory budgeting cities, investing $41 per person, which is slightly above our starting ask for $15 million per year. And so I just want to make sure that I put in context that I think, the $1 million proposed for the 21-22 budget is a start, but it only puts us at giving $2 per person in a city that's over 500,000 people. And given that Measure U was intended to be the people's investment in communities, I can't think of a better way to honor that commitment and to do so in earnest by committing and reserving funds for the community to govern directly and showing leadership by allowing their decisions to be final and show by example what true community partnership and engagement means. And so this is about really transforming us, a city that is rich in diversity, strong in neighborhoods, and has dynamic voices, into being a leader so that our budget can reflect the community and we can top the list of cities, not just in our literal investment, but in our principled commitment to taking a regressive tax in which our lowest income Sacramentans make an outsized contribution of their income and using it equitably, honorably, and inclusively. And for that reason, I really urge you to continue this conversation and really think about increasing your investment beyond just $1 million next year to really get closer to those numbers that I think are much more worthy of a Sacramento contribution and much more worthy of what Sacramentans in earnest have asked us for, especially with their voting to increase the Measure U contribution from a half cent to a full cent. So thank you for having us, and we look forward to hopefully getting some of those startup funds next week on consent and moving forward with this process in partnership with you.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you all very much. That concludes the hearing. Appreciate it very much. All right, that concludes the formal council agenda. Are there members of the public signed up to speak on items not on the agenda?
I have one caller for items not on the agenda, and I do have a board and commission appointment to read into the record to the Planning and Design Commission, Robert Chase. May I have my first caller, please? Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, yes, this is Lambert of To the Bay and Back Cheesecakes. I wanted to send my support to Mayor Steinberg. I read something in the paper about what happened at his home, and I wanted him to know that he is well respected in Del Paso Heights. He got a lot of votes out of Del Paso Heights. He actually helped the Grant High School pool get reopened. I also saw him with the christening of Viva Market. I remember that. He also did a wonderful job with the budget analysis with the late, great John Silva. So I just wanted to say that I think you're doing a wonderful job considering raising money for the homeless. I don't know much more you can do if you don't get all of the support you need. But I wanted to say that tonight. And as always, fun to the Bay and Back Cheesecakes. Our cheesecakes went viral during the Super Bowl. I don't know what more we can do, City Council, and definitely the City Manager's Office. It's just making us look better under pressure. Shout out to Grant High School in Del Paso Heights That's where you come from, a winning tradition, and that's where I come from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Thank you so much. All right, are there council ideas, comments, suggestions, thoughts, inspirations? Councilmember Harris?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of announcements here. We've been having a lot of homeless master plan discussions in District 3. I've presented at ESIA, River City Commons, South Natomas United. Tomorrow, we'll be presenting to the River District Board at 3:30 p.m. And then Thursday to the Gardenlands Northgate Neighborhood Association as February 11th at 6:30 p.m. And we are actively pursuing feedback from the District 3 community. And frankly, we're getting some pretty good feedback. So I appreciate everyone who participates in the process. And I believe Councilmember Ashby put out a public service announcement about this, but she and I, along with Natomas Unified School District and Sac County Public Health, are sponsoring on-site COVID testing each Tuesday and drive-through COVID vaccinations on Thursdays at Natomas High School. And for information about how to register for testing or to sign up to receive a vaccination, you can visit my council website. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Harris. Who else do we have anybody else up in the queue? Apparently nothing else. So if there's nothing to come before the City Council, we are adjourned. Thank you.